Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. Again, we're discussing Mumuksupadi by Pililokacharya with a commentary by Manavalama Munigal. And we are discussing the Dvaya Mantra. So we're in the Dvaya Prakaranam section. We have understood the first part of the Dvaya Mantra, Sriman Narayana Charano Sharanam Papadye. We are now on the second part of the Dvaya Mantra, Srimate Narayanaya Namaha. We discussed last time the meaning of Srimate. Of course, the word Sriman comes in the beginning of the mantra, so we had discussed it before. But in the second part of the mantra, the meaning is, there are some additional meanings, and we discussed that last time. So now we come to the meaning of the word Narayanaya in the second part of the Dvaya Mantra. So let's go to the text. I believe we start with Sutra number 170. So Sutra number 170, at the end of 169, Manavala Mamuni says, after this he explains the second word, Narayana, or to be exact, Narayanaya. So we know from our study in the Tirumantra Prakaranam that many times when we see Narayanaya, it's divided up into the actual word Narayana and the ending, the grammatical ending, which is the first, singular dative case, Maya. Okay, so let's see what he says. Narayanaya, text 170, Narayanaya is the one who is the Sheshi, Sheshi meaning the master of all. So it actually grammatically means unto, or to or for Lord Narayana. Since Narayana is the Lord of the dual realm, earthly and heavenly, meaning Lila Vibhuti, this material world, and the Nitya Vibhuti, the spiritual world, Pililokacharya says, to the one who is the Sheshi or master of all. The one who is the recipient, Pratisambandhi, normally this word Sambandhi in modern Indian languages means a relative. But Pratisambandhi here means the recipient of service is the Sheshi. The recipient of service is the Sheshi, the master. So the master is the one that we do the service for. Service or Kainkarya consists of acts of love springing from the experience of the Lord. This love is dependent on the object to be experienced. So he's just giving a definition of Kainkarya here. So Kainkarya or service, divine service, consists of acts of love. So when we love the Lord, then we want to serve him, and this springs from our experience of the Lord, by experiencing the Lord and his Tirumeni, we say his divine auspicious form and qualities, right? Ananta Kalyana Gunas, his unlimited auspicious qualities, and his divine form, his forgetting Sanskrit for that, but anyway, so when we experience this, we feel love for him, and then we want to serve him. So that's his definition here of Kainkarya, that it springs from, consists of acts of love springing from our experience of our relationship with the Lord. Just we can remember that there's another form of moksha which is considered inferior to the actual experience of the Lord, which is called Brahmanubhava or Kaivalya, where the soul is isolated and simply experiences itself. The soul is also a spiritual being; it's a sentient spiritual being, and the experience of the soul of itself is called Kaivalya Mukti. But here we're talking about Kainkarya. Kainkarya cannot exist in Kaivalya Mukti. Service cannot exist in isolation. We have to, for service to exist, there has to be an object of service, a person who has to be a person to be served, right? A servant and the service. So these three things have to exist for service to occur, right? For service to occur, there has to be someone to be served, someone to serve, and the actual act of service. So therefore, this love is dependent on the object to be experienced, right? So this love is so great because the experience of the Lord is so great, right? He is the greatest, and therefore our experience of him, our personal relationship with him, is the greatest. So therefore, it is necessary to articulate that object to be experienced, right? So now he's going to go more into it. He's going to go more into it. He's going to explain more about the actual figure of the Lord, or the qualities of the Lord, and that will give us an understanding more about Kainkariya, because by understanding the qualities of the form of the Lord, we'll understand our experience with him, and then we'll understand how much love comes from that experience, and therefore we'll understand how the service comes from that. Okay, so let's do the next one, and then we'll go and see what PBN and Acharya says about these two, because I think he takes both of these sutras together. Sutra 1, thus he says, Sutra 171, this word, in other words, Narayanaya, denotes this holy figure, his holy figure, Tirumeni. So in Tamil, it's called Tirumeni. All of these words, whenever we see the word Tiru means, refers to the goddess Shri, but also it like the word Shri in Sanskrit, can mean auspicious or divine, great, wonderful, beautiful, Shri. So Tirumeni, his divine holy figure is called it Tirumeni by Sri Vaishnavas in Tamil, and his qualities. So this word Narayanaya denotes his holy figure and his qualities. So remember, his qualities are Ananta Kalyana Gunas. Guna means qualities, Kalyana means auspicious, and Guna means qualities, Kalyana means auspicious, and Ananta means unlimited. So he has unlimited divine qualities, or auspicious qualities. The Advaitins, or persons who are not Vaishnavas, sometimes they read the Vedanta and they tend to say that God is nirguna. So again, the word guna means qualities. The prefix nir can mean without qualities. So sometimes in the Vedas we read certain statements that the Lord is nirguna. And then we have the statements of Vaishnavas saying that he has ananta gunas. So how can we reconcile this idea that some people say God has no qualities, and some people say God has unlimited qualities? So unlimited is completely the opposite of none, right? If you say something has no qualities, and then you say something has unlimited qualities, that's exactly the opposite view, right? So how to reconcile both of those things? Because we accept the Vedas, we accept the Upanishads, and we accept the word nirguna. The Vaishnavas accept the word nirguna, but they don't accept meaning given by the Advaitins of nirguna. We accept the word nirguna, meaning without qualities, to mean without material qualities, without inauspicious qualities. That's why when Sri Vaishnavas always talk about the qualities of the Lord, we say kalyana gunas, auspicious qualities, his good qualities. He has unlimited auspicious qualities. So that is how we reconcile the two terms, ananta, kalyana gunas, or unlimited auspicious qualities, with the Vedantic term. Sometimes we see nirguna, without qualities. Okay, so here Narayana is being explained. Right, Narayana is being explained as denoting his form, his auspicious form, his divine form, and his qualities, because he has unlimited qualities, but and he also has a divine auspicious form. So those two things together are what is meant by Narayanaya, unto that, right? So we should also mention that the world and the souls and everybody else, including Mahalakshmi, are considered to be attributes of the Lord also. So to serve the world, or to serve the other living beings, the other Vaishnavas, or the great acharyas or alwars, or Mahalakshmi, or the other consorts. This is also denoted by the word Narayana in full, because Narayana means everything. Narayana means everything. With this understanding of Sharira Shariri Bhava, right? Lord Narayana is the soul of the universe. So naturally the word Narayana means everything as well. So this word indicating the recipient of service refers to the divine form and qualities, which are the object of the experience that precedes service. Right? Once again, right? This word, Narayana, indicating the recipient of service, the person who receives the service, refers to the divine form and qualities which are the object of the experience that precedes service. So before service is the experience of the Lord's form and his qualities, and/or his qualities. As indicated in the passages, the wise ones, Suri, always see the highest abode of Vishnu, right? And that's footnote 89. And I think everybody can guess that is Rig Veda 122:20, right? Tad Vishnu Paramam Param Sada Pasyanti Surayaha. The terms being translated here are Sada Pasyanti Surayaha. Sada means always. Pasyanti means see. And Surayaha refers to, here it's translated as the wise ones. It means the Vaishnavas, the devotees, those who are the servants of God in Sri Vaikuntha. They always see the highest abode of the Lord, not just the highest abode of the Lord, they see the Lord. The Lord, Vishnu Pada, Vishnu Yat Paramam Padam. Vishnu Paramam Padam. Paramam Padam is not only the Vaikuntha, but it's also the Lord himself. So, and that wise one enjoys all pleasures. That wise one enjoys all pleasures. That's a quote from Taittiriya Upanishad 2:1. Let's see. That wise one enjoys all pleasures. The Lord's divine holy form and auspicious qualities are enjoyable and inspire service, just like his essential nature, as described in the Upanishad, Taittiriya Upanishad. And again, there's another quote from Taittiriya Upanishad 2:7 coming here. Attaining that delight, in other words, Brahman, the supreme Brahman, Sriman Narayana, he becomes blissful. Since he says qualities, right? And in the brackets here it says gunangal. So guna means qualities in Sanskrit. So when it's translated into Tamil or Manipavala and we give a Tamil ending to it, hal or kal or gal, right, is a plural ending in Tamil. So in Tamil, if we want to say guna, we say guna, but if we, or guna or gunai, and if we want to say more than one quality, right, plural, we say gunangal. Okay, so gunangal's there. Qualities, gunangal. So since he says qualities, in general, all his attributes without distinction between his qualities of knowledge and power, etc., his qualities of affection, etc., and his qualities of valor, Saurya, etc., are to be experienced. Okay, so since this is Manavala Mamuni just saying this to us, that in Sutra 171, Pilalokacharya has mentioned his holy figure to the many and his qualities. The word qualities, if we were to see the original Manipavala Sutra, is denoted by the word gunangal. And gunangal is plural. So Manavala Mamuni is saying here that because Pilalokacharya has used the term gunangal, or the plural of guna, right, the plural of qualities, therefore, he's saying that all the auspicious qualities, all the unlimited auspicious qualities of the Lord, including his qualities of knowledge, his qualities of power, his qualities of affection, his qualities of valor, his qualities are all to be experienced without distinction. So he's not making a distinction here between some qualities and other qualities. He's giving a blanket statement, his divine form and all his qualities and his qualities. the particular qualities which are appropriate to choosing the upaya. Sorry, excuse me. The particular qualities which are contemplated in the word Narayana of the previous sentence, right? The first sentence of Dwaya Mantra, Sriman Narayana Charano Sharanam Prapadye, right? The particular qualities which are contemplated in the word Narayana of the previous sentence are appropriate to choosing the upaya. Now let's recap a little bit. The first sentence of the Dwaya Mantra is about the upaya, is about the means. The second sentence of the Dwaya Mantra is about the upaya, the goal, right? The Lord is both the means and the goal. But in the first mention, in the first sentence of the word Narayana, right, we are emphasizing the Lord's qualities that have to do with him being the upaya or the means. In the second sentence, we are emphasizing all of his qualities, especially those qualities which have to do with him being the goal or the end, the means of the end, the goal. So the particular qualities which are contemplated in the word Narayana in the previous sentence are appropriate for choosing the upaya. So when we read the first sentence of the Dwaya Mantra, we understand who is the real upaya, right? The upaya is not Prakriti, the upaya is not the guru, the upaya is not the mantra, is the upaya. The upaya is the Lord, the main upaya, the absolute the upaya is the Lord, So he is the primary upaya. These same qualities are also to be thought of in this word as the goal. Right. So there are certain qualities which we understood the word Narayana to mean in the first sentence of the Dwaya Mantra, which have to do with him being the means. And they are also the same qualities here that we are meditating upon him as the goal. Just as there are two forms, upaya and upaya, of the Lord's essential nature, which is the locus or the place, right? And in brackets, he puts the Sanskrit word ashraya, which means shelter. So we can translate the locus, which is a Latin word, which means place, right? As ashraya. So just as there are two forms, the upaya means and the upaya, the goal of the Lord's essential nature, which form the locus or the ashraya, the shelter of these qualities, there are two forms of his special qualities, which have the Lord's swarupa, right, his essential form or essential nature, right, as their locus, as their place, ashrayi, their place, right? So do we understand this? So what he's saying is, in the sutra, it talks about two things, in two categories of experience of the Lord, which are given in this definition of the word Narayana. Two categories. So we have the Lord's divine form, and that's the first category, and the second category is his unlimited auspicious qualities. Okay. All this Pilla Lokacharya has revealed in his other book, his other Rahasya Grantha called Parantapati. So we can see the Parantapati, right, for more information about that. So after this, he states the main intention of this word. Okay, so he's given a general explanation or definition. As we always see that the way he does it is his normal method of explaining things is he first of all gives a general translation to the term. Then he's going to go into more detail. So now he's going to go into more detail. But before we go into more detail in the next sutra, Sutra 172, let's go and see what P.B. Anandacharya says about 70 and 71. So here we are. Oh, I'm sorry. That seems okay. Oh, if I remember correctly, we have a little difference in the numbering system here between the Mumuksupadi Sarata Deepika, which is the commentary by P.B. Anandacharya of Kanchi, and the original text that we have. So here, what is understood by Sutra 170 and 171 is understood by Chunaka's Sutras 171 and 172 in the Deepika. So again, these two sutras are simply, and he's given the actual sutras themselves. The meaning of Sutra 170 from the original text to 171 here is Narayanaya, and the meaning from, which is simply just stating the term coming from the Dvaya mantra that we're discussing. And then 171 in the main text, or 172 here, is to him who is the Supreme Lord. And that's all that's given in the sutras. So the rest of it comes from the commentary by Malavala Mahamuni. So now, if we look at what does P.B. Rangatara says, he says the meanings of the Narayanaya term, the word Narayanaya, are now explained. It means to him who is the Supreme Lord, because the quality of Narayanatvam, remember again that the word tvam or twa in Sanskrit, the ending, the suffix, when we add it to a word, it means like we add the short suffix ness in English. So Narayan-ness, or the quality of being Lord Narayan, right, which only he has, right? He is only Lord Narayan. Nobody else is Lord Narayan. Nobody else is God. So Godness or Narayanatvam, right, is lordship over the two vibhutis. Okay, so this is P.B. Rangatara's statement. He's saying what's one of the main things that distinguishes the Lord from everybody else, and that is that he is the Lord over the two vibhutis, meaning this material world, the lila vibhuti, right? Vibhuti means the glory, means glory. So the glory of the glorious place of lila vibhuti, and nitya vibhuti, the eternal glorious place, right? Sri Vaikuntha. So he is the Lord over both these. So that is one meaning to the word. That explains his quality of godliness or Narayanatva. So because this part of the mantra deals with service of the Chaitana, meaning the living being, the Jivatman, to the Lord, it is this meaning that is appropriate. Okay, so he's saying that this is the meaning which is appropriate. All right, so let's go back to the main text. Okay, so then carrying on with Sutra 172, this points to the Lord's Sheshitva. So he is the Sheshi, or the master, and therefore, just like P.B. Rangatara used the word Narayanatva, Narayanatvam, right? He is the Sheshitva. So Sheshitva means that he's the Sheshi. It's his Sheshiness. It's his masterliness, right? This points, this word Narayanaya, right? This again from the previous sutras. It points to these. It points to him being the Lord of the material and spiritual worlds. It points to his divine spiritual form and to all his Ananta Kalyana gunas. Right. So all of these things put together means that he is the Lord. Right. If somebody has all those qualities and all those things, right, then that person is definitely the master, the Lord. Okay, so that's what the point here is in 172. This explanation of the word Narayana points to his being the master. Since the object of experience is unspecified, it has been explained that this refers to all the Lord's qualities. Right. So as Manavala Mahamuni said before, right, we don't distinguish the certain qualities to certain other qualities. When we were discussing the word Narayana in the first sentence of the Dvaya mantra, we were especially discussing those qualities that he has, which makes him the means to our liberation, to our salvation. His like his qualities of Solabhya and Sushilya, and all these being easily accessible, being merciful, and all these sort of things. These are the qualities which makes him a good upaya, a good means, or the only means, the primary means of liberation. Right here, we're talking about all his qualities, all his qualities. So it's unspecified. It's not. We're not saying one quality over another quality. We're not saying any particular set of qualities. Right. However, since the Lord's aspect as Sheshi, as master, is especially appropriate to the specific meaning given in the dative case ending, right? Because what the dative case ending, Aya, means what? We know this from the Tirumantra Prakaranam that Aya means service. Means service. So again, it means service here. So part of the goal, or in fact, the goal, is service. So Narayanaya is the goal. Not just Narayana. Narayanaya is the goal. Narayana might just be, observing the Lord, Is that the goal? Just like we read in the Rig Veda, we're reading that quote from the Rig Veda, Pasyanti Suryaha. Okay, so the devotees are in Vaikuntha and they're seeing. Pasyanti means they're seeing the Lord. What does that mean? When they're seeing the Lord, they're experiencing his divine form and his qualities. Right? So just experiencing him is not moksha. Just seeing him is not moksha. But that seeing indicates that there will be service, because when we see him, when we experience his ananta kalyana gunas, his unlimited divine qualities, and when we see his tirumani, his auspicious form, divine or holy auspicious form, that experience that experience brings about love in us, and that love invokes service, invokes our desire to perform service. Our desire to perform service is there, right? Loving service has to start with love. There can't be loving service if you don't love someone. How does that love come about? That love comes about by the experience of seeing the Lord, of seeing his divine form, and experiencing his divine qualities. Okay, so that's what the point is being made here. However, since the Lord's aspect as the Sheshi, as the master, is especially appropriate in the specific meaning of the dative case of the ending, Narayanaya, this word refers particularly to Sheshitva, him being the master, right? So once again, can be no service without a master. There can be no service without a servant. There can be no loving service unless the servant loves the master. There is only love for the master, which comes about by seeing his divine form, his eternal, his unlimited divine qualities, realization that he is the Lord of everything. And so his lordship is the most important thing to inspire our service. Our loving service. He reveals the purpose referring to his Sheshitva. So in the next, so first of all, let's see what Pibyanandacharya has to say about this. So what was Sutra 172 in the other text is 173 here. In this Narayanaya term, his divine form and his divine qualities are told. Okay, which is what we just discussed. In this term, which describes the recipient of service, who's the recipient of the service? The Sheshi, or the master. The divine form of the Lord and his divine qualities, which are experienced through the service, are told. Okay. Go back to the main text. So now he reveals the purpose of referring to the Lord's mastery of everything, being the master of everything. Service is the proper object. Prapta Vishaya. Okay, so anytime you're looking in a Sanskrit book, if you look in the beginning of the book, right, there's what we call, in English we say table of contents, right? in a Sanskrit book, it's called a Vishaya Suchi. Suchi means like a table or an index, and Vishaya means the subject. The subject. Here it's called an object. Vishaya, subject or object, same thing, right? Prapta Vishaya. Prapta Vishaya. Prapta Vishaya means that the object to be obtained, proper object, right? The objective. Service is a proper object or objective, subject to the proper object. Excuse me. Service to the proper object is indeed delightful, right? So when we serve the proper person, that is delightful. Sometimes in the material world, and he's going to talk about this in a minute. Sometimes in the material world, we think of service as being a bad thing. If you say you're a servant or you're a slave, that's a bad thing. Slavery, servitorship is considered a bad thing. It's better to be free and not be a servant, not be a slave. Okay, but that's because the people who are the servants and slaves in this material world are serving the wrong master. When you are serving the right master, you are indeed full of bliss. It is delightful, right? So because he has a fantastic, beautiful, holy figure and divine form, and because he has unlimited auspicious qualities, serving him is a pleasure. That's the point. So it is stated in scripture that all dependence on others, paravasha, is painful, right? So sometimes we see these, and it also says service is a dog's job, right? Because dog's supposed to be man's best friend, or the dog always serves the master, right? So we think, and people associate this in the material world. They associate service with pain, right, or discomfort. Or it's difficult, right? Difficulty, or they consider themselves to be just like a dog, just like an animal, if they have to serve someone else, right? But this is not true in the sense of service to Sriman Narayana, the Supreme Lord, right? So sometimes it's there, and sometimes even in scripture it says that service is painful or service is a dog's job. And these are quotes from Manusmriti. So these two quotes are from Manusmriti 4:160 and 4:6. And we also saw these, we saw a discussion of these in Sutra 51. So if you want to go back and look at Sutra 51, we also discussed those quotes from Manu in that context. Okay, so, but unlike service done for an unworthy object, and all other objects are unworthy, right? Otherwise, anything which is connected to the Lord is worthy. The Lord and anything connected to him is worthy. Anything not connected to him is unworthy. Now, if we say everything is connected to him, that means everything can be served, but it has to be in connection with him, right? So just like Mahalakshmi, the Acharyas, the Alwars, the Guru, other Vaishnavas, other sentient beings, we wish the well for the other sentient beings. So we can serve anything in relationship to the Lord. But let's see what it says here. But unlike service done for an unworthy object, which is objectionable, service done to a worthy object is acceptable and indeed delightful, as stated in the passages. And here we're going to get some more passages, some more quotes that counter these other statements. So let's just go through those, and then we'll see if there's a comment here. Whichever way the creator or ordainer goes, that way one should go along. As a shadow follows a creature, and this is a quote from the Parama Samhita of the Pancharatra Agama, Parama Samhita. Like a shadow which follows, everybody has a shadow, and the shadow follows you as you move. So he's saying, whichever way the creator or the ordainer goes, we should go along with that. Right. And why shouldn't it be served? That shade of the tree, which is Vasudeva. It is neither too cold nor too hot, and it extinguishes the coals of hell. Right. And this is a quote from Garuda Purana 230, 31. 1, 230, 31. Okay, so there's a couple of quotations which counteract these other quotations that all services, all dependence on others is painful, all service is like the job of a dog. So these are termed as tadiya. Yeah, others are of him. So tad or tat in Sanskrit is a pronoun, right? It means him or that or her, right? It can be depending on the context, like that. So tad means him. In this case, it means the Lord. Tad, him. We have that famous Vedantic statement, tat tvam asi. Tat tvam asi. Tat is the same thing as tat. Tat tvam means, so tat means him or that. It can mean that. The Advaitins take it to mean that supreme and impersonal Brahman. We take it to mean him, the supreme personality of Godhead, Sriman Narayana. Tat, right? Tvam, you. Asi just means are. It's the verb to be. So many of the Advaitins say, you are that. You are that, right? Or that you are, right? Is the way it's tat twamasi, that you are, right? We say that actually this means tasya tvam asi. You are of him. You belong to him. You are his servant, right? That's what it actually means, right? So here the word tat means also him, right? So tadiya means of him. So just like tasya is the genitive case or the possessive case, singular of tat or tad. So we can either say tasya, as in our breaking of the words of the sandhis in tatwamasi, tasya twamasi, right? Or we can say tadiya. Tadiya means of him, that which is of him. Everything is of him because he's the origin. He's the creator of everything. In the beginning, there was one, and the one was God, right? Was Sriman Narayana. He was before everything else. And from him, the one became many, right? He created all these worlds and all these beings from him. So everything is from him. Everything is coming from him. Everything is of him. So therefore, everything is tadiya in that sense. Everything is the universe, the whole of creation is the body of God. Everything is created, supported, and controlled by him. That's what the soul, the relationship of the soul and the body is. So this idea of shariri bhava, which Ramanuja has very kindly given us to understand the relationship between God and the universe, the rest of everything, including us and everything, right? The relationship is like the soul to the body. The universe and all the living beings and everything is like the body of God, and God is like the soul of that body, of that universal body. He is without him, nothing goes on. Without the soul, the body doesn't exist. The body can't exist, right? So the soul is the controller, is the creator, the controller, the supporter, right, of the body. Okay, so tadiya means of him. Tadiya means of him. So very simple. Okay, so we went through that. Those texts. That's also the way that we prove things, is we find some texts which may be difficult to understand or to accept, and then we have to find other texts that. So in this case, the texts from Manu, which is a lower pramana, a lower shastra, it's Dharma shastras, right? A lower scripture, right? Talk about service being painful and service being a dog's job, and therefore we take some other quotes from Parama Samhita and Garuda Purana, right? Which are higher shastric pramanas, and they overcome these quotes from Manu. Okay, so after this, he reveals the meaning of the suffix on the word Narayanaya. Okay, so just as we did in the first Prakaranam, the Tirumantra Statra Prakaranam, right? We understood the word Narayana first, and then we understood the ending, Aya. right? So here again, we've understood the word Narayana first, and we're going to understand now the term Aya, which is the dative case singular ending. Okay, so before we do that, let's see what P.B. Anangacharya has to say in his version of 173, which will be his 174. So once again, the sutra is, but the quality of lordship is expressly meant here. The quality of lordship. How was that expressed previously in the main text? Sheshitvam, or Sheshitva, right? Lordship. Being the quality of being the master, the quality of being the Lord, okay, is expressed here by the word Narayanaya, specifically by the term Narayana. So even though many qualities are experienced, it is taken that the quality of lordship is stressed here. Right. So remember, before this, in the general understanding of the word Narayanaya, he explained that it means all the Lord's qualities. Yeah. And also his divine form. But here, then he's saying, but specifically in this context of the second sentence of the Dwaya mantra, the term Narayana emphasizes, out of all the unlimited qualities of the Lord and his form, right, and his ownership of and controllership and mastery over the different material world and spiritual world. Out of all of those things, the important thing which is stressed here, the important quality is his sheshitva, or his mastership, his lordliness, his lordship. That's the thing which is emphasized, because that is the thing which is emphasized in the second part of the Dwaya mantra, because the second part of the Dwaya mantra deals with the goal. And the goal is to serve the Supreme Lord, right? So his mastership is emphasized when we're talking about service. The first part of the mantra, Dwaya mantra, is talking about surrender. Second part is talking about service, which is the Sri Vaishnava understanding of liberation, right? So eternal service to the divine Lord, the divine form of the Lord and his qualities, that is moksha. So since service is indicated by the second part of the Dwaya mantra, or the goal is service, right? Therefore, the word Narayana in the second part of the Dwaya mantra indicates most distinctly and most primarily that his mastership, that he's the master. Because without master, there's no service. So anytime we talk about service, we have to talk about service to whom? Service to the master. So that's the reason. Because it is this quality that is important for the service that is to be spoken about. Right. Because this quality of being the master has to be there for the service to be spoken about. Otherwise, there's no reference to service. Without a master, we can't talk about service. Right? If people say, I serve, who do you serve? You serve somebody. You have to serve somebody. Right? So therefore, first of all, before we talk about service, or while we're talking about service, automatically, concomitantly, we have to talk about the master. Okay, so let's go back to the main section here. So the next sutra, this fourth case, or dative case ending, right? Dative singular case ending, Aya, proclaims service, or painkarya, which is the same thing that we understood when we were in the Tina mantra or Astakshara mantra prakaranam, right? When we came across the Aya in Om Namo Narayanaya, right? Then we understood it to mean service. Since it occurs immediately after the acceptance of the upaya, right? The acceptance of the upaya, the acceptance of the means, which results from recognizing one's status as a shesha, or servant. This fourth case, dative ending, not only means for his sake, tadartya, tad again means him, right? Artya, his purpose, for his purpose, or his benefit, right? Right? But it also proclaims the service which results from the upaya, the means, which has been accepted, right? So we have just got through talking about the means. the first sentence of Dwaya Mantra talks about the means. Sriman Narayana Charano Sharanam Prapati. I surrender unto the 2 feet of, I take shelter of the 2 feet of Sriman Narayana. That means Lord Narayana, along with the goddess Shri. And through Shri as a mediatrix, as a Purushakara. So surrender is talked about in the first part. That is, surrender to him, or property, right, or Sharanagati is the upaya, is the means. The Lord himself is the means, right? Second part, therefore, comes right after that. After surrender, then what? After surrender, moksha. After surrender, service. Moksha is service, right? Kainkarya, right? So what's it saying here? Since it occurs, right? Since this term, Narayanaya, or this second part of the Dwaya mantra, Srimate Narayanaya Namaha, occurs immediately after the acceptance of the upaya. When we do property or Sharanagati, we've accepted the Lord as the means to our liberation. We've given over the responsibility for our liberation to the Lord. We've said, "Oh Lord, we surrender to you, therefore you save us. You do whatever you have to do to save us," right? We depend totally on you and to save us. So we've accepted you as the means of our liberation, our salvation, right? Therefore, directly after that, right, comes this statement, Srimate Narayanaya Namaha, and the Aya means service. Service comes after that, comes immediately after that, right, which is liberation. The fourth case ending not only means for his sake, service for his sake, right, but it also proclaims service which results from the upaya, which has been accepted. So the service also has to do with the service that we perform as surrender, as part of our surrender, So proclaimed service means it explains the request for service. The request for service. The fourth case ending is a request for service, right? Immediately after surrender to the Lord, right? We don't immediately go to Sri Vaikuntha and start serving him. But first of all, the first thing that a servant does when he wants to serve the master is he wants to know what the master wants. So therefore, there has to be a request for service, which is the first part of service. Service may be eternal, but it starts with a request. So this is, sometimes there are different types of eternal, right? People talk about something's eternal, right? Something is eternal if it has no beginning and has no end. That's one definition of eternal. But eternal can also mean something that has a beginning, but has no end. That's also eternal, right? Mathematically, we have all the numbers that exist, both the negative and the positive numbers that exist. That they're unlimited, eternal. We also have a set of numbers that start from the positive numbers, set of positive numbers, which start at 0. So they have a definite start. But they have no end, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., up until infinity. So that's also eternal. So there are different types of eternal, of understandings of eternal. Eternal service, in the case of Nityasuris, people who are always servants of the Lord. They have always served the Lord in the past and they always serve the Lord in the future. They are eternally his servants, like that. However, there is another type of living being. Us in this material world, we're bound, we're covered by ignorance, we're weighed down by the weight of our unlimited sins that we've performed over many, many lives and deaths, right? When we attain liberation, when we leave this material world, we go to the spiritual world, we are engaged in the service of the Lord. That service has a start. It has no end. That service will have no end. That will be eternal service. But it does start at the time of liberation, right? So it's also called eternal service. It's also eternal service. But it has its beginning. It has a beginning. that. So there's some, for instance, there are some things like sometimes the soul in the material world is called the nitya bada, eternally bound. Okay, so karma is the thing which is binding us, the sin, the weight of our sins and of our punyas, also our merits and demerits. They're all weighing us down here in this material world. So karma is said to be anadi, or beginningless, but it does have an end. So when we say nitya bada, or someone which is eternally bound, it doesn't mean that he's eternally bound in the sense of always in the past and always in the future. Eternal means that in the past he was eternally bound, but at a certain point of liberation, the Lord liberates him and he's now unbound. So that is also eternally bound, right? So eternally or unlimited means in that sense. Anadi means beginningless. Like the set of negative numbers. So we get the set of negative numbers comes from infinity and comes up to zero and can't go further than zero. So that is mathematically what an example of a set of numbers, an infinite set of numbers, which stops at a certain point. So karma is infinite, is unlimited, is beginningless, but it stops at a certain point. So there are examples of things. There are examples of things which are loosely called eternal, which don't mean that they start. They never begin and never end. There are some things which never begin but end, and there are other things which never end but they have a beginning. So our service to the Lord, our liberation, starts at a certain point and goes on forever. Whereas our karmas, we can't see, they never start, but they stop at a certain point, right? So all of these things are called eternal. So these are different concepts of eternal, and we can understand them by means of the analogy of certain sets of numbers in mathematics. So in mathematics, there are different numbers. There are different infinities. There are different infinities. One infinity may be greater than another infinity, right? So that's how we can understand them. That's an analogy, mathematical analogy, to understand different forms of eternal and different forms of unlimitedness. Okay, so proclaim service means it explains the request for service. So request for service means that you have to request service. That's the beginning of service. At the beginning of before service, there has to be a request. So service means special activities that cause the Lord's joy. So in the Sankalpa, many times, especially Vadagalai Sri Vaishnavas, they say, Bhagavad Prityatam or Sriman Narayana Prityatam. So Bhagavad means the Supreme Lord. Sriman Narayana is more specific, right? Prityatam means for his pleasure, for pleasing him. So many times we hear this in the Sankalpa, in a vow or a statement, a ritual statement before the beginning of a ritual, right? That I am doing this. Why am I doing this? To please the Lord, right? Or even if we do the Satvika Tyaga mantra where we say that I'm not doing it, but the Lord is doing it through me to please himself, that's fine too. But the object in either case of the Lord or of us doing the service is to serve the Lord and to give him pleasure or give him joy, right? What gives him joy? We have to find that out, and we have to talk about that. But the goal is to please him. The goal is to please him. So service means special activities which cause the Lord's joy. Now, the Tengalai Sri Vaishnava is the southern school. That the northern school, normally in their Sankalpa, they say Bhagavad Gita or Sriman Narayana. Bhagavad Prityatam or Sriman Narayana Prityatam, for the pleasure of the Lord. Sriman Narayana. The Tengalais tend to say Bhagavad Kainkaya Rupam, Bhagavad Agyaya, Bhagavad Kainkaya Rupam. On the order of the Lord has an order, right? And for his service, Bhagavad Kainkaya, Bhagavad Agyaya, his order, and Bhagavad Kainkaya Rupam, for his service, in the form of service, right? So why that distinction? We could probably go on for a long time about the distinction between those two things. But what does Bhagavad mean? Bhagavad means specifically, we want to please the Lord, and Bhagavad means on his order, right? So therefore, that indicates it indicates also this request for service. So the request for service is there, right? When we request service, the Lord tells us what he wants done. What he wants done is his order. So when we say we are doing this on the order of the Lord, it means that there must have been a request and there must have been an answer. What can I do for you, O Lord? And he says, you can do this for me. Then the only thing after that is to accept that order. And by accepting that order, we accept the service of the Lord. That's the contract. So the contract is, we approach the master and we say, I understand I'm your servant. That's my proper position. I request service from you. He says, serve me in this way. That is a contract. That is a verbal contract, right? If I go to somebody and I say, I will serve you, they say, serve me in this way. Then we've made a contract, right? Now, then there's service. That is the form of service. So that is the way the Southern School, the Tengalai Sri Vaishnavas put it. They put it that we approach the Lord, we make a request for service. He tells us what the service is. That is his order. And we, therefore, perform that service. And that service is his service. Bhagavad Kainkarya. It is the form of his service. Bhagavad Kainkarya Rupam. Now, does it please him or does it not please him? Naturally, it should please him. But if we go to somebody and we say, how can we serve you? And they say, by doing this, we don't know. We may not know exactly whether it pleases them or not, or the purpose that they have given us the service. But if we simply do what they want us to do, they should be pleased, like that. So whether the Lord is directly pleased or indirectly pleased, or whatever his purpose is for asking us to do the service, right? That's his business. That's his business. Whether he's pleased or whether he's not pleased, or whether he's asking us to do some service which will please others, or whatever it is, we don't know exactly, like that, and we don't really care, right? His order is, we request the service. He tells us what the service can be. We have that divine contract with him, and therefore we are going to follow that, and that is the service. And that service is moksha. That service is liberation. That service is the ultimate goal for us. So here we're talking about service being the ultimate goal. We're talking about that meaning that there has to be a master, there has to be a servant for service to go on, right? Similarly, the servant has to request service, right, for the service to start, right? Servant doesn't just start serving because he doesn't know whether he'll please the Lord or not. So the Northern Sri Vaishnavas, the Vadagalais, they want to serve, and they want to serve the Lord, and they want to make sure that the Lord is happy with their service. So they say, I'm doing this to serve you. I'm doing this to serve you. The Southern schools say, I'm requesting you what you want. You're telling me, you're giving me the order. I'm accepting that, and that's your service. I don't know whether it is pleasing to you or not, but I'm accepting that as your service because that's your order, right? So it's basically the same thing. Both sides are saying we go to the Lord, we request for service. The Lord tells us what to do, and we do it, and that's his service, like that. The ultimate goal seems to be in the Sankalpa of the Northern School of the Vadagalai Sri Vaishnavas. The ultimate goal seems to be please the Lord. So we accept that. That's also there, right? Service means special activities which cause the Lord's joy. So if we understand that is a definition, we have to admit that the goal is to please the Lord. So the Vadagalais put the emphasis on that part of it. The Southern School, the Tengalai Sri Vaishnavas, they put emphasis on the approach to the Lord, right? We've made a request for service. We get the order back. What's the Lord's order? We follow that order, and that order is service, and service is important to us. The service itself is important to us. The result is none of our business, and we don't care. Like that. Hopefully the result will be good and will be pleasing to the Lord. And in the case that he asks for a particular thing, it should be. But it is our job as a servant or as a slave is not to reason why. Right? So there's a saying in English, yours is not to reason why, yours is just to do and die. Right? So you don't have a right to question. You don't have a right to think about whether that service is pleasing the Lord or not. You just have a right to service. You're a servant, therefore your only right is service. Don't worry about whether it pleases him or not. Okay, so it's both the same thing. Both of them are surrendered servants. The northern and the southern understanding is very, very similar. Okay, so it's not, we shouldn't get into a big fight about this, but it's just a technical issue. So service means special activities meant to cause the Lord's joy. Yeah, we agree with that. So we don't disagree with that. So therefore, Bhagavad Prityatam, Srimad Narayana Prityatam, no problem. Okay, so service. As the following passage indicates, this service is both verbal and physical. So as the following passage indicates, this service is both verbal and physical. So here we have two quotes. One quote is, he sits singing the Saman. He sits singing the Saman, and this is from Taittiriya Upanishad, right? It is, the Sanskrit is, etat samagayan naste, right? Which comes at the end of the Brigavali, or the third part of the Taittiriya Upanishad. Brigu realizes the Supreme, and he chants a little song which is called the Saman. That is Taittiriya Upanishad 3:10. Okay, so that would indicate that service can be verbal. It can be prayer. Prayer can be service. Those who pay homage, that's another quote, and that quote comes from the Mahabharata 12, 3:23, 36. Mahabharata 12, 3:23, 36. So I'm not sure the exact context of that. But in any case, paying homage would be physical, just like the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita, Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto, right? Majjiji Mam Namaskuru. Majjiji Mam Namaskuru. Namaskuru means offering your pranams or your obeisances or your homage to the Lord. Whichever way the creator or ordainer goes, that way one should go along. So this reminds us again of the Tengalai Sankalpa. Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita means according to the Lord's order, we should serve him. According to his order, we should serve him. So whichever way the creator and ordainer goes, that way one should go along. And that is attributed to the Paramasamhita of the Pancharatra Agama, that quote. So then he says, if this service is to be requested, does it mean one is to serve only on that occasion when the request is made? To this he replies, right? So then we'll get the reply in a minute. But first of all, let's see what P.B. Anandacharya has to say about this sutra, which for here it's 174. For him it'll be 175 number. So once again, Sutra 174, here 175 means, in following one's nature. What is our nature? Again, our nature is that of a servant, right? A Shesha, right? And seeking the correct end. What is the correct end? The correct end is service, right? The whole meaning of the second part of the Dvaya mantra is service, which is the goal, which is moksha, which is liberation, right? All equivalent, all synonymous, right? It is service that will be tasteful. It is service that will be tasteful. Right. So his comment is, in the Shastra, service towards the wrong end is rejected. So if the goal of the service is wrong, then that service is rejected. In contrast, towards the right goal, or to the right person, is what we're talking about here. Service is a delight. That service is a delight. Therefore, saying that the quality of lordship, which we were talking about, the quality of mastery or lordship, mastership, is the one that is important here and is appropriate here. So that's why in the term Narayanaya, right, the Lord's Sheshitva, or his being the master of all, right, is emphasized, because being the master of all means automatically that there is service, right? There can't be service without a master. There can't be service without a servant, and therefore there is service. And as we said, there has to be a request for service also. Okay, so going back to the main text, we want to see about that service. Is that service only? We've understood that there's a request for service, right? So is that service only to be performed if there's a request, right? Or at the time of explaining, the Lord's order, when the Lord makes the order, is that the only time that the person serves, right? So here it says in text 175, Sutra 175, service indeed is eternal. That's the answer. So if this service is to be requested, which we understood that service has to be requested, right? If we want to serve somebody, right, the master, therefore we have to request, what do you want us to do, right? That's the first thing, right? Anybody, if you go into a restaurant, you sit down, the waiter comes along and says, what would you like to eat, right? First thing is there's a request, right? Nobody just sits there in the restaurant and expects them to be brought a particular dish. They have to request it from the waiter. Okay, so the same thing. The request has to be there from the servant, right? Or this, actually, let's put it a different way. The waiter has to request from the customer. So in this case, the living being in liberation, or as soon as after he surrenders, the very first thing after he surrenders to the Lord, right, is he asks, what do you want me to do? What service should I do? So if this service is to be requested, does it mean that one should serve only on that occasion? Right? So you start off, remember we were saying service is one of these things or service or liberation, right, is something which for the Nitya Buddhas, for the eternally conditioned souls, has a beginning but no end. Whereas karma has no beginning but has an end, right? So service, eternal service, has a beginning for us. It begins with our liberation. When our liberation is confirmed, then service begins, eternal service begins, like that. Before that, we can also serve in the material world, but to a limited extent. Okay, so eternal service to the Lord in Vaikuntha, which is the goal, which is the liberation, that begins at a certain point and it goes on forever, like that. So that's what's being pointed out here in Sutra 175, that in the beginning, there's a request. What should I do? How should I serve? And when I get the answer to that, then I can do that service, and that service continues forever. Okay, so service indeed is eternal. Let's understand this. Subservience or sheshatva, right? Again, the word twa means ness. In English, we use the suffix ness. So servitorship is what sheshatva means. Subservience is the soul's essential nature. And in the absence of doing something, kinchitkara, Velakudi Krishna Swami's non-profit organization is called Kinchitkara. So kinchit means a little. Kinchit means a little. So akinchit means maybe a lot or something, right? Kinchitkara means doing something, right? So kinchitkara. That subservience is not established, as it is said. Okay, so subservience or servitorship right, is the soul's essential nature. And in the absence of doing anything, that subservience is not established, right? So servant's got to serve. If a servant doesn't serve, then there's no service and there's no meaning to himself calling himself a servant. So somebody can call himself a servant, but if they're not actually doing any service, they're not a servant. Servant's got to serve, right? Servant has to serve. If a servant doesn't serve, he's not a servant. Yeah, that's the point being made here. So in the absence of doing anything, that subservience is not established. As it is said, one who doesn't do anything does not fulfill his subservience, his sheshatva. And that's a quote coming from, attributed to Mimamsa. Mimamsa, we have different types of Mimamsa. Mimamsa means discussion, but in the sense when people usually say Mimamsa, they're talking about Karma Mimamsa or Karma Kanda, the first section of understanding of Vedic thought, right? There's different sections of the Vedas, and so there's what we call the Purva Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa, right? The Purva Mimamsa is the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, so it's the first discussion, the previous discussion or the first discussion, and the secondary discussion is the discussion about Upanishads and about Vedanta. That is called Uttara Mimamsa. In both cases, the word Mimamsa is given. Mimamsa means discussion, deliberation, yeah, discussion, deliberation, arguing, and coming to conclusions. Yeah. So in the Mimamsa, there's a statement. Akinchit karasya means akinchit kara means doing something. So it's akinchit karasya means of doing something, right? Sheshatvan upapati, attributed to Mimamsa. So there's a statement there in Mimamsa, which this is based on. So what is it saying here? So here's the translation of that. One who doesn't do anything does not fulfill his subservience or his sheshatva. That's the translation of that. Therefore, service is eternal for the soul, right? And we discussed this before also. When we're picking a master, the best master, of course, the only and best master is Sriman Narayana. But if we don't serve Sriman Narayana here in this material world, we're going to serve somebody, because the eternal essential nature of the swadharma of the soul is service. So even when we're here in this material world, if we're not serving the Supreme Lord, we're going to serve somebody else, either our boss or our wife or our family or our relatives or our country or our nation, whatever it is, or our society or humanity, you know, people are serving everything, or our senses, right? Everybody's serving their senses, or our mind. There are many other masters, and these masters, if we don't pick the right master, then we will not make advancement, right? If we pick the right master, then our service will be correct and proper, and delightful also, and joyous. Okay, so therefore, service is eternal for the soul. Thus, the Acharyas have declared, when will I delight you doing service devotedly with you as the Lord of my life? And this is a quote from Yamunacharya's Stotra Ratna, text 46, which we're studying right now with Dr. Tirunarayan, right? Or we've just finished studying 46 and we've continued on to 47. So there's a request for service there in Yamunacharya's Stotra Ratna. So that's quoted here. When will I delight? When will I delight you doing service devotedly as you are the Lord of my life? And another quote here, I will serve you eternally. I will serve you eternally. And that's a quote from Ramanuja's Sharanagati Gadya. It's the closing lines of Sharanagati Gadya. So again, Ramanuja wrote 3 Gadyas, Sharanagati Gadya, Sri Ranga Gadya, and Vaikuntha Gadya. And these prose works or Gadyas have to do with Sri Rangam, of Sri Vaikuntham, and surrender. The first one being Sharanagati Gadya, having to do with surrender. So the closing lines of that request for surrender, or that work on surrender by Ramanuja, right, is this: I will serve you eternally, which is a declaration by the servant. We could say that this is the request. This is the request that the servant makes of the Lord. I will serve you eternally. How would you like me to serve you? So if service is eternal, is it necessary to request it? Okay, so first of all, before we explained about how service is the ultimate, service is moksha, service to the Supreme Lord only is the goal. The Lord is the goal, right? What does that mean? The Lord is the goal? The Lord's service is the goal. So, because the Lord is the master, we're the servant, and we want to serve, there has to be a request for service to start the service. And then it's said that although there's a request for service, that doesn't mean that the service is only done after the request and there's no other service done ever. There's just one request, one order, and then the service goes on, and then the service, when that order is carried out, the service is finished and that's over. No, the service is therefore eternal. So the order by the Lord gives us an eternal service, Right. So then the question again here is, if service is eternal, then why did we have to ask for it? Why was there a request to ask for it? Right? Okay. So if service is eternal, is there a necessity to request for it? So this he says, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's see what P.B.N. says about this Sutra 175, which he will number 176. Okay, so the fourth case ending, Chaturthi Vibhakti of the term Narayana, speaks of the prayer for service. Okay, so again, as we discussed with the Astakshara mantra Om Namo Narayanaya, the term Narayanaya has this dative case singular ending aya, which means service. So here again, in the second part of the Vaya mantra, Srimate Narayanaya Namaha, we have this Narayanaya with again the ending aya, which means again service to Sriman Narayana. It means to or for Narayana. Okay, so here it refers to service. The meaning of the fourth case, aya, which is added to the term Narayana, is now explained. The case shows the prayer made to obtain service. The prayer to obtain service. So again, in general, let's think about this. The Dwaya mantra is made of two sentences. The first sentence says, I surrender unto to the 2 feet of Sriman Narayana. Sriman Narayana Charanashantapati. I surrender unto the 2 feet of Lord Sriman Narayana. Then immediately after surrender, Srimati Narayanaya Namaha, he's saying that Narayanaya, in this sense, in the second part sentence of the Dwaya mantra, means a request for service. A request for service. Right? So the knowledge of the soul's nature leads to obtaining the means, right? So we discussed this before. What is the impetus for us to surrender, to do property, to do sharanagati, to surrender and take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, and to take shelter of the Lord as being the primary means of our liberation or salvation? What is the impetus for that? Knowing our actual nature. What is our actual nature? Yes, Vedantically, we can say we're a doer, we're knowledgeable, we're sentient. There's all these things we can say about the soul, but the most important thing is that we're a shesha, we're a servant, we're a slave, we're a possession of the Lord. We are meant only for his purpose, right? So when we come to that realization, that leads to obtaining the means for our liberation, right, which is the Lord. It is appropriate, therefore, to say that the fourth case ending, which comes after gaining the means, right, in the first part of the Dwaya mantra, we've gained the means by taking shelter of the Lord, right, by surrender, by sharanagati property, right, and therefore it's appropriate that this fourth case ending comes after that, Srimati Narayanaya Namaha, because that is going to bring forth the goal of that means, which is service. So what's the Dwaya mantra? It's a request, it's a taking shelter, it's a property. First part is property. First part is surrender. Second part is service, which is the goal. In both cases, both of the Lord. The Lord is the means and the Lord is the goal. Right? So the Lord is mentioned in the first part, Sriman Narayana Charanashan Bhagavad, and he's also mentioned in the second part, Srimati Narayana Namaha, because the Lord is the means and the goal, the means to liberation and the goal of liberation. So surrender and service, surrender and service. So these are the two means of the two parts of the Dwaya Mantra. Let's go back to the main text. So looking back at the main text again. So the question again by Madhavala Mahamuni at the end of discussing text 175 is if service is eternal, right? Let's drill down on it. Let's try to understand exactly why we need to request it if it's eternal. So what I said was there's different concepts of eternal, right? So karma is eternal, has no beginning, but it does have an end. It's considered eternal. Not everything which we talk about being eternal has no beginning and no end. God has no beginning and no end. The souls have no beginning and no end. Like that. But karma has no beginning but has an end. Service has, or moksha, may have a beginning but no end. For the eternal servants of the Lord in Vaikuntha, it has no beginning and no end. But for us souls in this material world, our service to the Supreme Lord will have a beginning and will have no end. Okay, so there's different concepts of eternality, and we've discussed that just before. So if service is eternal, why do we need to request it, right? If it's always going on, there will be no request, right? There's no request. So it is, if there's constant serving of food in a restaurant like a buffet, then there's no need for a waiter. There's no need for a request. There's no need for the waiter to request something. The service is always going on. Yeah, that's my example. Okay, so anyhow, so here's the question. Why is there a need for a request for service if service is eternal? We just said that service is eternal. Why? In what way? Is there a need for a request then? To this he says, it must be attained by constantly requesting it. It must be attained by constantly requesting it. Again, like when you go to a restaurant, the servant, the waiter comes to you and continually requests, what would you like to eat? What would you like to drink? Would you like more? Would you like dessert? Would you like, even would you like your bill? So he's always coming to you and asking this constant requests from the waiter. Yeah. Okay. So here, he's a servant. I'm just giving that analogy, right? So it must be attained by constantly requesting it, right? So unlike property is surrender, and surrender is done once only. So when we talk about the Dwaya Mantra, we have to not forget that the first part of the Dwaya Mantra indicates property or surrender. But every time we chant the Dwaya Mantra, we're not surrendering. We are simply remembering that one time when we surrendered, because surrender is done only once. But that remembrance of the surrender is important. Yeah? So now the question is, service is eternal, but we have to constantly be requesting it. Since the object of service of the Lord, the object of service is the Lord, is extremely lofty, and since the one who does the service is extremely dependent, right? The Lord is the only one who is independent, right? Since without the request for service will not be accomplished, it must be attained through constant prayer. So he's emphasizing here that there should be requests for service all the time. There should constantly be requests for service, right? If you want the service to go on eternally, there has to be constantly reevaluation and request of this from the Lord as to what He wants us to do, how He wants to be served. So, since the object of service, the Lord, is extremely lofty, extremely great, He is the greatest, and since one who does service is extremely dependent, we are totally and absolutely dependent upon Him. as our controller, as our supporter, as our only means to liberation, as our only master, like that. And therefore, we are helpless and hopeless without him, right? And therefore, we should constantly be praying to him for service, right? He gives a reason for constantly requesting it. So let's have a look at the reason also, because, and then we'll go to see what P.V. Nandacharya says. Text 77, 177. Promoting the glory of the Sheshi, promoting the glory of the Master, that means the Supreme Lord, is the Sheshas, the servants, true self-realization. Swarupa Labha. Labha means what is to be gained. So the Swarupa means my essence, my essence. My essence, the essence to be gained, my true self-realization, is promoting the glory of the Supreme Lord. Right? Without showing the Master to be supreme and showing the glories of the Master, the servant doesn't truly come into his own. We only understand the true nature of the servant, right, by glorification or understanding the true nature of the Master. Right? So promoting the glory of the Master is the servant's true self-realization and goal. It should be our goal to promote his glory. One who does not glorify the Sheshi or Master, one who does not glorify the Master, lacks subservience or Sheshatva or servitorship. As it is said, there is no subservience or Sheshatva, right, for one who does not do anything, right? And this is the same quote that we had before, coming from, this is actually a quote from Mimamsa, and the quote is, na kinchit purvataha sheshatvam, na kinchit, right? Without doing, purvantaha, it means without doing something, there's no service, right? There's no servant. There's no servant without doing something, right? Servant, what I say before, servant's got to serve. Servant's got to serve, so if servant doesn't serve, is not a servant. Right, servant has to serve. If you say somebody's a servant, what are they doing? How are they serving? If they're not serving, they're not a servant. Right. So one who does not glorify the Master lacks subservience. As it is said, there's no subservience or sheshatva or servitorship for one who does not do anything. Therefore, promoting the glory, the pleasure of the Lord, right? And Sheshi, Lord and Sheshi, means Master, right? Is the Chaitanas, the living beings, the Jivatmas, special occupation. Our special occupation, our only occupation, our essence actually, is service and promoting his glory for his pleasure. It allows him to realize his essential nature. So what does service also do? Service is our goal, and service is moksha. Service is liberation. Service is our salvation to the Supreme Lord. And through that service, we really come into our own, and we understand our true nature only by service. Right? As I said, in this material world, we're also serving. Right? When we come to the realization that we are eternally servants, and either we serve our family, our nation, our king, or whatever, our society, our senses, our mind, whatever, either we serve these other masters or we serve the Supreme Lord, who is the only person which we're actually supposed to serve. So once we understand that he's the one to be served and we serve him, then we really understand the nature of our servitorship. Since serving and glorifying the Lord is a way to give joy to the Lord, right? That is the goal. We discussed this before when we talked about the Wadagalai and Tangalai, the different northern and southern school understandings of the Sankalpa, the ritualistic statement of the vow, right? Of that I'm now going to do a particular ritual. I'm now going to do a particular part of my day. I'm going to perform different activities in my day, and I'm therefore doing this for a particular reason. The northern school say we are doing it for the pleasure of God, and the southern school say we are doing it on the order of God, because we've made a request to God for service, and he's given us an order. We're following his order, and we're doing that as service, as his service, which is our duty is his service. We don't know necessarily whether it's going to please him or not, but here, Manavala Mahamuni is saying that since serving and glorifying the Lord is a way to give joy to the Lord, we understand, as Tengalais, we understand that that is going to please the Lord. So that's understood. Whereas the Vadagalais specifically say that our goal is to please the Lord. So both sides, both Palais, they have the idea to serve and please the Lord, which is fine. So they just emphasize different parts of that service. So thus it is to be requested constantly. Thus it is to be requested constantly. Okay, so let's that was the explanation of why even though service is eternal, it should be requested constantly. Let's see what P.B. Anangacharya has to say about these last two sutras. So this is Sutra 177, which in the other book is 176. And it says, the service is eternal. That is the translation. So we were just discussing that. Performing service is the true nature of the soul, right? As this nature is not realized when service is not performed, the service will last for as long as the soul, right? As this nature is not realized when service is not performed. When service is not performed, then we can't understand that somebody's a servant. So somebody may be a servant. Let's say somebody's a servant, a butler or maid or something like that. When they're off the job, when they're outside and they're on their day off, we don't see them as a butler or a maid. We don't see them as a servant because they're not serving. They're doing their own thing on their day off, right? So service is understood when the servant is serving. We can understand that. And we can understand a person is a servant because they're serving. Now, he says the service will last as long as the soul. So the soul, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings. All right. So God is eternal. The souls are also eternal. So God is eternally the master, and we're eternally the servants. So if we're eternally servants, that means we're always serving. So we're either serving this material world, serving other things, or we're serving God. So, but the service is eternal. And that's why the essence of the soul is described most perfectly by describing him as a servant. Okay. So then in the next sutra, he says, the service should be obtained by praying for it eternally. Right? So then the question also came by Manavala Mahamuni, and here by P.B. Anangacharya, if the service is eternal, why pray for it? Why do we have to pray for it? Why do we have to request service? We're servants. We're always serving. When we start serving the Lord, why do we have to request service in the beginning? Why do we have to constantly request it? Without the prayer, service will not be attained. Therefore, it has to be prayed for eternally. Right? So I'll give you another example of the other example of the drowning man. So there's a drowning man, right? Without requesting service from the lifeguard, he's not going to be saved, right? He has to make some request. He has to make some indication, right? Similarly, my other example of going into a restaurant, right? If you don't, if the waiter comes and said, how can I serve you? And say, well, we need more time to look at the menu or whatever it is. We don't know. So then the waiter goes away and there's no service. There's no service unless there's a request, right? So the waiter is making the request of you, but if there's no answer, right? If there's not, the waiter has to continually ask, how can I serve you? How can I serve you? How can I serve you? And then the answers come, the orders come. So the servant should always be requesting, and the prayer, because we're servants, because we're eternal, and because we're servants, and because to be a servant means you have to serve. It means eternally we have to request service. We have to always request service. Does that make sense? It does. So let's go back and let's see what the main text says in the next thing. So now after this, he explains the last word, namaha. The last word, namaha. So again, we're in the Dwaya Prakaranam. We're talking about the Dwaya mantra. Sriman Narayana Charano Sharam Papadye is the first sentence. Srimate Narayana Namaha is the second sentence. We have understood the first sentence to mean property, to mean Sharanagati, basically. And it is a remembrance of that at that one time when we surrendered, right? When we say it again. And the second part is the goal, which is moksha, which is eternal service to the Lord in Vaikuntha, right? So the second sentence is service, has to do with service. It is also the Lord. The Lord is the means and the Lord is the goal. So the first sentence is the means, the second sentence is the goal. The second sentence, Srimate Narayana Namaha, we discussed the word Srimate there, right? With reference to the word Sriman in the first sentence and also with some other aspects. Then we discussed the word Narayana, what that meant in this specific instance. It means something in the first sentence. It means something a little bit different in the second sentence. Then Aya is, as we saw in the Tira mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya. Aya is the dative case, which means subservience or service, right? And then we are now discussing, we're now up to the last word in the second sentence of the Dwaya mantra, which is Namaha. Now, we've also understood the word Namaha before too. In the Astakshara or Tira mantra Prakaranam, we have the word Namo, Om Namo Narayanaya. That word Namo and this Namaha, they're the same word, Namo and Namaha. The reason why it changes to Namo is because of a Sandhi rule that the Visarga before a voiced consonant changes to O, right? Okay, so before the N, it changes to O. If we put the Namaha on the other end, then there's no. If we say Om Narayanaya Namaha, it's Namaha. If we put Namaha in between Om and Narayana, Narayanaya, we get Om Namo Narayanaya. Okay, so that's explained. Okay, so now Namaha. What does it mean with Namaha? Okay, so Namaha, right? And remember when we were discussing Tira Mantram, we understood that Namaha, Na means not and Ma means my, right? Not me, right? It means you, it means unto you, right? So Namaha, that which removes all defects in service. Namaha, that which removes all defects in service. So like a polite ending to our request for service. Namaha. The general import of the word namas destroys egoism, ahankara. So we have two types of egoism, if you remember. There's ahankara and mamakara. So ahankara means I-ness, and mamakara means minus. Mama means my in Sanskrit. Aham means I, and mama means my. Kara simply means a sign of I-ness, a sign of I, and a sign of my. So I-ness and minus, I, me, mine, right, is a famous song. I, me, mine, right, by the Beatles. Okay, so this is what we're obsessed with in this material world. We're obsessed with ourselves, and we're obsessed with the things that we feel we control or we own. We're obsessed with us and extensions of us, what we feel are ours. So I and mine. Right. So this is egoism. The word namaha says no to that. No to that. I am against the I-ness and the minus. Right? I want to give up that I-ness and minus. Right? So egoism, ahankara, and possessiveness, mamakara, should be given up. And the word namaha helps us to do that. The meaning of the word namaha helps us to do that. Though it is capable of destroying the obstacles to one's true nature is, of course, being a servant, the means and the ultimate aim, right? So namas is what is helping us destroy the obstacles. In Sanskrit, the word for obstacle is virodhi. So we've just began studying Artha Panchika. In Artha Panchika, there are 5 things. Everything's divided up into 5 in Artha Panchika. So we have 5 things. We have also 5 virodhis. We have 5 obstacles, right? So we'll discuss that later on in our Artha Panchika class. But here we're talking about namaha destroys the obstacles. What are the obstacles? The obstacles are I-ness and minus, ahankara and mamakara. So namaha destroys those, helps to destroy the meaning of them. helps to destroy the obstacles to what? To our true nature, right? So there's an obstacle. Here we're talking about the different obstacles, right? So in Arthapanchika, we'll talk about those. It's divided up into 5 in Arthapanchika. Here we'll see how many it's divided up into. So the first obstacle is the obstacle to our true nature. We don't believe that we're a servant. We don't understand that our basic nature is being a servant. Second is we have an obstacle that we don't understand what the means is. The means is the Lord. The means is the Lord. The ultimate means is the Lord. There are other preliminary means like controlling the mind and body to approaching the acharya. The acharya gives us the mantra. So the mantra, we do property. Property is a means. The mantra is a astachara mantra is a means. These are all preliminary means. The ultimate means, right, is of liberation, is the Lord Himself, right? So the nature of the nature of the soul as servant, right, or as slave or as possession of the Lord, completely controlled and supported and completely under the control or possessed by the Lord, right? And the means, the Lord Himself. So we have the virodi or the obstacle that we don't understand, that the means is the Lord, right? And the ultimate aim, right? So what are these 3 things in here? He says Swarupa, Upaya, and Purushartha, but we say Tattva, Hita, Purushartha. Tattva is our nature as a servant. Tattva. Tattva means the principle. What is the principle? The principle is that we are servant, right? Tattva, Hita is the means, right? And Purushartha, the goal. So the reality, the means and the goal. What's the reality? What's the means and what's the goal to liberation? Okay, so here is using the words Swarupa, Upaya, and Purushartha. It means the same thing as Tattva, Hita, Purushartha. Okay, so though it is capable, what is capable? The meaning of the word namaha, which destroys egoism and possessiveness, right, is capable of destroying the obstacles, the devotees, to our true nature as a servant, right, to the means to liberation, which is the Lord Himself, and to the ultimate aim or the goal, which is eternal service to the Lord in Vaikuntha, right? The Swarupa, Upaya, and Purushartha, as in the namas in the middle word of the Tiru mantra, which we discussed before in the Astakshara Tiru mantra Prakaranam. We discussed that the middle word is Namo, Om Namo Narayanaya, the middle word is Namo, and therefore it's the same meaning, again, coming again in the second part of in the very last word of the Dvaya mantra. Here, it is not the same. Here, it is not the same. Interesting, right? Since it is stated here after the prayer for service, right, in this context, it destroys the obstacles to service, right? So, to summarize once again, Namaha in Om Namo Narayanaya, the word Namo, has to do with destroying the obstacles to surrender, the obstacles to reach the goal, right? The obstacles to reach the goal are ahankar and mamakar, I-ness and minus, possessiveness, right? After giving up those, we understand our true nature as a servant. Then we surrender. We do property like that. First of all, we control the mind and body. We approach a guru. The guru is sent to us by God. The guru gives us pancha samskar. He gives us the astakshara mantra. We practice the astakshara mantra. We understand the meaning of the astakshara mantra. Then, by understanding that meaning, we're doing property. We're surrendering to the Lord like that. These are preliminary means. Then we understand ultimately that the Lord Himself is the primary means of our liberation, right? So first of all, we understand our true nature. Then we understand the means to our liberation. And finally, we understand service. We understand the goal. We understand the goal, eternal service in Vaikuntha. We understand the goal of all of this. By that namaha, in the middle, between the two other words in the Om Namo Narayana mantra, Astakshara mantra, right? So we understand all those things, right? But here we already surrendered. The first part of the Dvaya mantra has got to do with surrender. It's a remembrance of our one time that we surrendered, right? Sriman Narayana Charanasharam Prapadye. So surrender is already done. Then Srimati Narayanaya Namaha. Srimati Narayanaya, Narayana, we just explained, Narayanaya is all about service. Aya is all about service, and therefore there's a request for service. So we surrendered. There's a request for service. The service is going on. The service is eternal. Now, why again Namaha? Why do we need Namaha again? We needed Namaha back then, right? In the first part of the Dwaya mantra, or in the Astakshara mantra, we needed Namaha, right? In the Astakshara mantra, we needed Namaha, right? For all those reasons. But why again do we need it here? Service is already attained. The goal is already explained. Why do we need Namaha again at the end of the Dwaya mantra? Doesn't make any sense, right? But even after attaining liberation, even after attaining the service of the Lord, whether here or in the spiritual world, right? That Namaha continues eternally to destroy the obstacles, not to our true nature, not to the means, not to the goal, but to the obstacles to the service, to the eternal service. So here at the end of the Dwaya mantra, Namaha means primarily to destroy the devotees, the obstacles to eternal service, the obstacles to its service. So somebody might think, well, what possible obstacle could there be, right? What possible obstacle could there be in eternal service, right? We've already attained Vaikuntha or whatever it is. We've already turned the Lord's service here. So how can there be an obstacle in service, right? Maybe we can see in the material world there could be an obstacle in service, but how could it be in the spiritual world? Let's first of all see what P.B. Nangacharya says about this one. Okay, so we're looking for the next. This is going to be equivalent to the 178. 179 here, there's a little bit difference in the, as I said before, in the numbering system here. So 179 here is 178 in the other main text. So again, the meaning of text 178 in the main text and 179 here. For the soul who is meant to serve him, the Supreme Lord, making the Lord pleased is true to his nature and is also the goal. So if a soul does not bring about the Lord's pleasure, then it does not qualify to being a servant. Right? We would say a servant that doesn't please the master is not a very good servant, right? So therefore, doing service makes it that the soul has earned its true nature. Such a service brings about the brightness of his divine face, right? He is happy, he becomes happy. You see it on his face. And therefore also satisfies the end seeked by the soul. Right. Thus, this service is worthy of being prayed for eternally. Okay, nice. So we'll go back and see this other point. The other point here is about Namaha. So we talked about Namaha being specifically at the end of the Dwaya mantra, the word Namaha, talking about defeating any defect or any obstacle to that eternal service. So, text 179, the defect is doing it for oneself. Doing it for oneself. Thinking that one is doing the service for oneself. Right? I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I'm a servant and I'm doing it for my own purpose, for my own purpose. Doing it for oneself means thinking it to be a means to one's own pleasure. Now, when we go and we serve the Lord, it's pleasurable. It is pleasurable for us, like that. But thinking like that, that the reason I'm doing it is for my own pleasure, or I'm doing it because that is keeping me out of the material world, right? It's keeping me from the pangs of samsara. That is a defect. That's a defect. Doing it for oneself means thinking that it be a means to one's own pleasure. That is thinking I'm the enjoyer and mine is the enjoyment. And this quotation is from an unknown Sanskrit source, which we don't know, right? We ought to do it with the idea that it is acceptable for us only because it pleases the Lord. This service is acceptable for us as servants only because it pleases the Lord. And once again, the emphasis by the northern school of Vadagalai Sri Vaishnavas is Bhagavad Prityatam or Srimad Narayana Prityatam, that the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. But if instead we do it while affirming ourselves to be the enjoyers and owners, the Bhoktritva and Madhyatva. Okay, so we were asked before in this discussion, we were asked about the word Tadiya. So here we have Madhya. So Tadiya is for him, is of him. Madhya is of us. Mad, Tad. Tad is him, Mad is us. So Bhoktritva, if we think Bhokta or Bhoga or Bhoktri, right, means enjoyment, right? If we just like when we offer the Lord food, sometimes we call it Bhoga. It means Bhoga simply means an enjoyable thing, something which is enjoyed, right? So Bhoktritva is, again, Twa means ness, so it means the enjoyableness or enjoyment. The one who is the enjoyer, Bhoktritva, who has enjoyment as his nature. The enjoyer, the Bhoktritva, the enjoyer, right? And Madhitva, the owner. It is of me. It is mine, right? This service is for me to enjoy, and it is mine. Therefore, it is mine. If we think like that, that's wrong. Then this is contrary to the ultimate aim. This is contrary to liberation. This is contrary to the Purushartha, the goal of that service. If the servant thinks that his service is meant for his own benefit, right? Of course, we benefit by servicing the Lord. If we do service to the Lord, we enjoy that service. There's unlimited bliss in serving the Lord. Still, if we think like that the reason we're doing the service, the primary reason for doing the service is to please ourselves, right? Or that this service is actually ours, it's our service, right? Then we lose that we've lost the plot, we've lost the whole aim, right? The aim is actually for to please him, and it's his service, right? Bhagavad Gita, the Tengalai Sri Vaishnavas in their Sankapa, they say Bhagavad Gita, it's his order. It's his order. It's not ours. It's not our service. So that's not Madhita. And Bhagavad Gita, it's for his service. He is meant to enjoy it. Okay. Very clear. So therefore, in this word, namaha, the obstacles in the attainment for this service are destroyed. Right. So let's see what Pibyanangacharya says. Okay. So now we have these terms, namaha, which means which destroys the obstacles in the service here. And it says here, the term namaha removes the obstacles in doing service. Now the meaning of namaha term is explained. Namaha term, the namaha word or term commonly removes ahankara and mamakara, which is I-ness and minus, or egoism and possessiveness. Therefore, as in the namaha, in the term in the middle of the Tira mantra, namo, right? This namaha here can remove the obstacles to the soul's true nature, the obstacles to the means, which is the Lord, right? The obstacles to the end, which is liberation, right? Eternal service to the Lord of Vaikuntha. However, as this namaha comes after the prayer for service, right? So we just saw that Narayanaya, Srimate Narayanaya Namaha, and the Narayanaya is the prayer for service, for eternal service, right? Because the second part of the Dwaya mantra is about eternal service. It's about the goal, it's about liberation. So because it comes after, because Namaha now comes after, whereas in the Astakshara mantra, you notice Namaha comes before. In this mantra, Namaha comes after. So there's a reason why it comes after. It comes after because it removes obstacles in this sense. It comes after and removes obstacles to the performing of the service. So after the request for service, right, then we have to take up the service. if there's an obstacle to taking up the service, this namaha, or understanding of this namaha, meaning, right, destroys those obstacles. So back to the main text. So this word namaha, right? In this word namaha, ignorance. Ignorance is what? I-ness and minus, right? Ahankar and mamakar are also destroyed. In this word namaha, which prays for the destruction of egoism, ahankara, and possessiveness, mamakara, there's also the destruction of the following. Number one, the ignorance of considering that which is not the soul to be the soul, which makes one engage in action or karmas, as stated in the Vishnu Purana. And here's a quote from the Vishnu Purana. The thought that what is not the soul is the soul. What do we mean when we say that which is not the soul is soul? When we think that the body or the mind is the person, when we think we are this body, when we think we're this mind, when we think that we are Americans or we are Australians or we are, Europeans or, like that, whatever we think when we don't understand the true nature of the soul. So the thought of what is not the soul, that what is not the soul is the soul, and the thought of ownership is what one does in what one does not own. This is the twofold seed that gives rise to the tree of ignorance. Now, that's a really great quote, and that is from Vishnu Purana, and I believe Vishnu Purana 6, 7, 11. But in P.B. Anangacharya's edition, the word samsara appears to instead of avidya or ignorance, right? So there are two different readings here of this verse from Vishnu Purana. One ends in ignorance. It's the root of ignorance, or avidya, right? Vidya is knowledge. The opposite to knowledge is ignorance. So avidya is ignorance. In P.B. Anangacharya's commentary, he will say that this verse, he quotes this verse, and it has a variant reading. And the variant reading for the last word instead of avidya is samsara. So gives rise to the tree of samsara, of this material world of birth, death, disease, and old age, this cycle of material existence. Okay, so that's the quotation there, right? And two, so that was the first thing, right? The second point here, right? So what are we talking about here? We're talking about points, different points of how namaha, things are destroyed by the meaning of the word namaha. Ideas that are, concepts that we have, misconceptions that we have, which are destroyed by the word namaha, the meaning of the word namaha. The karma which results from such action, right? So what was the action? It was described in this verse from Vishnu Purana. The action is the thought of that what is the soul, what is not the soul is the soul. Thinking things that are not the soul to be the soul. So thinking that I am this mind, I am this body, I am this, I am a certain person, I'm fat, I'm thin, I'm white, I'm black, I'm young, I'm old, I'm thinking all these things which I am not, right? And thinking and the thought that of ownership of what one doesn't own. One owns nothing, actually. What does it say in Upanishad? Isa avasyamidam sarvam yatkincha jagatam jagate tena chaktena bunjitam advidakkasisvidhanam. Right? Everything, absolutely everything in this material world, including you and I, including all the sentient beings, everything in this world and everything in the spiritual world is owned and controlled by God. Isa vasyamidam sarvam. Everything. Absolutely. Isha, the controller, the Lord, owns and controls everything. Absolutely everything. So if you think you own anything, including yourself, you do not. He owns everything. He controls everything, including yourself. So to think that you own anything, including yourself even, right? You are wrong. That is a misconception. That is one of the things which is destroyed by the understanding of the meaning of namaha. So then, number two, we have those misconceptions, right? And any karmas or any which results in such action, any action that we do in this world that results from this misunderstanding, these misunderstandings that we have given in point 1, right? That is also destroyed. The karma that results from any of the actions. So all the things that we do in this material world, which are based on those misconceptions that I am the mind, I'm the body, I'm the senses, I am fat, thin, white, black, whatever it is. I'm an American, I'm a European, whatever it is, right? All those misconceptions, all those actions, which are done under these misconceptions, we get sinful reactions. We may even get pious reactions, right? We get punyas and papas. We get merits and demerits attaching to us in this material world. Merits and demerits. We have to go to heaven and happily get the reaction for our merits, and we have to go to hell and suffer for our demerits. So we have these sins and pious activities that we perform under this misapprehension that we have in point number 1. But this namaha not only destroys the underlying ignorance, right? The underlying ignorance, the avidya, but it also destroys the karma. It destroys the karma, the result from the actions done in the ignorance. So we're doing these actions in ignorance and we're getting the results, good or bad, and they're both being destroyed. Not just your sins are being destroyed, your pious credits are being destroyed too. If you don't want your pious credits to be destroyed, then don't surrender to the Supreme Lord, right? Lord Hari is one who takes away. What does he take away? He takes away the good and the bad, right? He takes away all your sins, but he also takes away all your pious credits too. You will not go to Swarga and enjoy with the Apsaras for millions of, because of digging wells or opening hospitals or feeding people. That's not going to happen. That's all going to be taken away as well as all your sins. So both the merits and demerits are taken away. Sometimes people don't like that idea. But here it said, by the understanding of that word namaha at the end of the Dvaya mantra, that the karmas, the karmas which result, right, from those actions of ignorance done in ignorance, right, those are also going to be destroyed. And thirdly, the bondage to the material realm, because that's what keeps you here. That's what the bondage is. The bondage is the karmas. So therefore, if the karmas are destroyed, there's no more bondage. If somebody is bound, and you cut the ropes, you cut the binds off them, right? Then they're released. They're free, like that. When the bonds are cut, you become free. You become liberated. The bondage to the material realm, which results from that karma, that's the result. What does Krishna say in the Charma Sloka, which we're going to come up to very quickly here? The Charma Sloka. Sarva dharmam parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyo. Aham tva sarva papebhyo. Sarva papebhyo, from all sins. All sins, which means all karmas, both all merits and all sins. All sins doesn't just mean all sins. It means all merits and all sins. The merits are keeping you in the material world. The sins are also keeping you in the material world. The punya and the papa are both keeping you here. So when that's all destroyed, there's nothing keeping you here in this material world. So the bondage in this material world is because of the karmas. These are all 1, 2, 3 here. First of all, the mentality of the soul, the wrong mentality of the soul, that he owns different things, he owns things, and that he even owns himself, and that he is something other than the soul, and that the soul is not meant intrinsically to be a servant of God, right? All of these misconceptions lead to us performing actions. Those actions give us punyas and papas, merits and demerits. Those merits and demerits keep us bound in this material world, and all these 3 things are destroyed by the word namaha at the end of Dvaya mantra, right? By the meaning. For this reason, in contemplating the word namaha or namas in the Sharanagati Gajya, which elaborates the Dvayam, okay, so if we want a further elaboration of the Dvaya mantra, we go to the Sharanagati Gajya, which is the whole conversation by Ramanuja, between Ramanuja, the goddess, Mahalakshmi, Sri Devi, and her consort, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sriman Narayana, right? This is all about property, about Sharanagati, right? So this is a Sharanagati Gajam is an explanation, is a elaboration of Dwaya mantra. So therefore, it must also have an elaboration of this word Namaha, which comes in the end of Dwaya mantra. Ramanuja prayed for, number one, destruction of all karmas, of all sins and merits, right? Of omission and commission, right? So there's different types of sins and there's different types of merits, right? There's omission and commission. So you do a sinful activity, you do a pious activity, you get a result. If you don't do a sinful activity, if you don't do a pious activity, right, there's a result. There's also a result. So some rules are there, some rules are do's, some rules are don'ts. So sometimes when you do something, there's a result. Sometimes just by not doing anything, there's a result. Right? So the destruction of all karmas, of omission and commission, by the phrase beginning with mano vakayi. Mano vakayi means what? By the mind. Mano or manaha means mind. Vak means by the speech. And kaya means the hands, or by the senses, by the body, right? So bodily, verbally, and mentally. Mentally, verbally, and bodily. And kahi means is instrumental case. It means by, with, or from. By or with. It usually means by or with. Yeah. So by our mind, by our words, by our actions, by our hands, by our actions, right? So these karmas, these are accumulated by either sins or merits of omission or commission that are produced in these three ways, right? Usually we think of sins or of pious activities being carried out by our body, but they can also be carried out by simply by saying things, by our words, and even in the mind. Even in the mind, although, we've heard that mental offenses are not, but still, if we commit offenses within the mind, that sows a seed of that sinful activity in our hearts, So we are bound to probably to enact that externally, right? Thinking, feeling, willing. We think first, and then we do something like that. So if we contemplate the object of the senses, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, contemplating the object of the senses, one eventually will externally manifest those sins or those merits, right? So that's why Ramanuja uses that specific phrase, manova kayehi, right? And of course, I'll give you the full context of this in Sharanagati Gadya. Ramanuja says, please forgive completely all the beginningless and endless sins of omission and commission I have done by word, by mind, or deed against you or your devotees. Offenses which are endless, of many kinds, and unforgivable, which I have or have not begun to commit, right? Have not begun to commit means I'm simply thinking about them. I will commit them in the future because I'm constantly thinking about doing those things. I'm going to do those things, right? So which I have or have not begun to commit. So I want you to please forgive everything. Forgive not only my past sins, forgive my present sins. I want you to forgive also my future sins. I want you to forgive even the sins that I'm even thinking or contemplating about doing. I want you to forgive those also. So he says, right, that I have or have not begun to commit, which I have done, am doing, or will do. Right? So once again, this is from Sharanagati Gadya by Ramanuja. So once again, I'll just read it again very quickly because it's really nice. Please forgive completely. This is our prayer. Please forgive completely all the beginningless and endless sins of omission or commission I have done by word, mind, or deed against you or your devotees, offenses which are endless, of many kinds and unforgivable, which I have or have not begun to commit, which I have done, am doing, or will do. That is a comprehensive prayer to the Lord to forgive me. Okay, so So that is there, right? Because so we're talking about the word namaha and the understanding of the word namaha, which destroys these three things. First of all, our essential ignorance, or that we believe that we are not this body, and that we are this body, and that we are associated with this body, and that we are the owner and control of certain things, right? Of anything. And then the karmas that we get, the reactions that we get from the activities based on that ignorant understanding. And then finally, right, when we can just, because namaha, the understanding of namaha destroys all of that, it really actually destroys our bondage. That's what's keeping us in this material world, as in the Charma Sloka, Lord Krishna mentions to Arjuna, because Arjuna is thinking it's all these sins and merits and things that have accrued to me, which is keeping me here in this material world. If I fight, it's going to be sinful because I'm going to kill all these people. But even then, if I get glory and I've got some pious activity by saving the world from these demoniac forces, even that is going to keep me here in this material world. So I'm destroyed either way. Either I win or I don't win. He says, what will happen? Either I win or I don't win. In either case, I'm going to incur sin or merit even, right? But in either case, it's going to keep me in this material world. So that's why Krishna says, Sarva Papebhyo, give up, abandon all varieties of religion. Don't worry, I'll protect you from all the reactions to these sins and merits, right? So then when the bondage is freed, then naturally we're free from this material world. So that's described here. The prayer of Ramanuja Sharanagati Gajya describes that in detail, right? Which is the first part of 3 here. And the second part is the destruction of ignorance by the phrase beginning with Anadi Kala Pravrita. Anadi Kala. Anadi Kala means beginningless time, right? Anadi Kala Pravrita. Pravrita, right? So this is also from Sharanagati Gajya, and I'm going to read you that full statement also. Here is the full statement that has this Anadi Kala Pravrita, the destruction of ignorance by the phrase Anadi Kala Pravrita. Here it is. Please forgive all the wrong ideas I have indulged in since beginningless time, and all the wrong actions that I'm doing, will do, and have done towards myself, towards the entire world, and towards anything at all. This is Ramanuja Sharanagati Gajam, immediately following the previous passage. So just imagine praying every day like this. Sri Vaishnavas recite Sharanagati Gajam every day, like that, and especially on the Panguni Uttaram in front of the Lord and Goddess Lakshmi, Mahalakshmi, Ranganayaki, sitting together one day a year at the Panguni Uttaram festival, the festival of surrender, like that. This is the prayer. This is the prayer that we do. Now, the surrender, of course, is done once only. But this reminds us of all the aspects of surrender. And that Sharanagati Gajam is the elaboration of the Dwaya mantra. So while we cannot say Sharanagati Gajam constantly, we can continually chant the Dwaya mantra, which is what Ramanuja ordered us to do. So, and number three here, the destruction of bondage to the material realm by the phrase Madhya Nadi. Madhya Nadi. So again, Madhya means of me. Madhya, of me, right? So let's beginning with the idea of me. This is also a reference to Sharanagati Gajja. So here we have this reference to Sharanagati Gajja. I'll read you that passage also that includes the Madhya Nadi, right? So please rescue me from my Maya, my illusion, which is like a flowing current of beginningless and endless karma, obscuring your essential nature. That fatal Maya or illusion, born of perverse knowledge and from the idea that I am the enjoyer, that Maya or illusion, consisting of the 3 gunas or modes of material nature, which come from having a body and senses, the capacity to enjoy, and a subtle form. I am your servant, having proclaimed myself to be one who is surrendered to you, Sharanagata, and is now your slave. And this is the paragraph come after the last paragraph that we read. So we read 3 paragraphs in a row from Sharanagati Gajam to explain, right, the Dwaya mantra, and specifically the last word of the Dwaya mantra, Namaha. Okay. So since the relinquishing of self-purpose, swa-prayojana, self-purposelessness, self-purposeness, right? Prayojana means purpose. Swa-prayojana means self-purpose, relinquishing of self-purpose. So when we know that we're servants and therefore we want to serve, but the reason we do service, or while we're doing service, we shouldn't think this is because of our nature and therefore we benefit from that. We benefit, or it's our service, right? We enjoy it. So in service, okay, so since relinquishing self-purposeness, swaprayojana, in service is the chief meaning of Namaha, he explains this further. First, he answers the question of how one ought to be while doing service. So how should we think? So in other words, if we shouldn't think in this way, if we shouldn't think that I'm enjoying this service, supreme eternal service of the Lord, or I'm doing it for my enjoyment, or it's my service, if we shouldn't think like that, then how should we be thinking? So first, let's see what Pibyanangacharya says about the previous sutra. I think we're almost finished here with the Vyapakarnam. So the obstacle to service is removed by Namaha. Is doing the service thinking that is for the soul's benefit. Doing the service and thinking that doing the service to God is for the soul's benefit, that's an obstacle. And that's destroyed by the understanding of the word Namaha at the end here. What is the obstacle to performing the service? It is doing the service for the soul's pleasure. The service should not be performed that way. It should be done for his pleasure. Thinking of oneself as the enjoyer, or that the act is for one's enjoyment, is a wrong end. Right. Okay, so in this Namaha, which prays for the removal of obstacles, other things such as ignorance, karmas, and attachment to this world are also removed. That was also explained. This Namaha, word Namaha, also removes the other obstacles to the performance of service. They are the ignorance, that is, the origin of karmas, or either good or bad, right? Punya and papa, merits and demerits, sins and merits. The karmas that are thus created, and the attachment to worldly things that follows. Right. So going back to the main text. Text 181. So what are we explaining here now? Is the question by Manavala Mamuni is, first he answers the question of how one ought to be while doing service, right? So that's the question which is coming. So right, if we shouldn't think like this, how should we think when we're doing service? One should be, as in the passage, to you alone we do service, right? And this is a quotation from Andal's Tirupavai, second last verse of Andal's Chitram Chirkale. Chitram Chirkale Vandunai Sevita. Yeah, this is verse 29 of Andal's Tirupavai. To you alone we do service, desiring nothing more, which is what Andal says in her second last verse of her 30-verse garland of verses, a poem, to the Lord, which she offers as a garland to him, just as she offered the garland which she had worn to the Lord, who she was in love with. So she has this Tirupavai, which is considered to be a garland of verses. So the very second last verse, which is very important, at the end of all Sri Vaishnava services, we chant some prayers called Satamurai. Satamurai starts off with Chittam Chirkali, then Vandunne, and it's chanted twice, this particular verse. Okay, 29th verse. So one should be, as in the passage, to you alone we do service, right? To you alone we do service, desiring nothing more, right? So when service is done, we should be thinking, as Andal said, to you alone we do service. That is, we need to do service for your enjoyment alone, not ours, not yours and ours. In other words, it's for the Supreme Lord's enjoyment only, not for his and for ours as well. So without any thought of self-enjoyment, the service should be done. According to this, we need to do it for the joy of the Sheshi or the master alone. The Alwar also revealed this, saying, take me for your sake. And this is a quote, usually when they say the Alwar, whenever a Sri Vaishnava says Alwar or the Alwar, what does he mean? He means Nam Alwar, the leader of the Alwar. And normally, whenever he says this, it's a quotation from Tiruvai Moli, which is the magnum opus of Nam Alwar, 1,000 verses. Now, he wrote some other things as well. And the different Alwars have written different things. So when you hear a Sri Vaishnava talk about the Alwar or Alwar, right, they're talking about Nam Alwar, right? Similarly, when you hear them talking about butter, there's so many butters, right? There's Sudarshana butter, there's so many butters. Parasara butter is the one. Parashara butter is the person they're talking about. So when a Sri Vaishnava says butter, he means Parashara butter usually. When he says Alwar, he means Nam Alwar usually. Okay, so here, that's why they just said Alwar, the Alwar. The Alwar means Nam Alwar. Nam Alwar has said where? Normally when we're quoting Nam Alwar, we're quoting Tiruvai Moli because it's his magnum opus. So here we're quoting from Tiruvai Moli 294. It's the second, it's divided up into, his Tiruvai Moli is divided up into centums. It's divided up into hundreds. There's 1,000 verses. So it's first 100, second 100, third 100, fourth 100, etc. And each 100 is divided up into decades. So the first 100, this is the second 100, the ninth decade, right? The ninth set of 10 verses, right? Out of the second 100 verses, right? So it's basically verse 294, right? 2.9.4, 294 of Tiruvai Moli. So that's how you understand it for any of those who have the book or go to the website. This is the book. If you want to read it in English, the sacred book, the 4,000. If you don't have it, if you don't have the full prayers of the Alwars, let me know. I will give you the link and you can download it, right? The other thing is, if you want to see it on the internet, if you want to see the original Tamil, like that, this one also is just Tamil and English translation. So what I need to do is I need to do the transliteration of the whole 4,000 verses. Haven't had time right up until now to do that, but if people get more interested in the works of the Alwars and the philosophy of Nalaya Prabandham, then we'll do that. And and there's a website called dravidaveda.org, I believe, .org or .com. Dravida Veda. Anyway, look up Dravida Veda, and that gives you all of the same translations by this Sri Ramabharati, who is an Arya, one of the persons who sings, who knows all of 4,000 by heart, and he sings them in front of the Lord. And so, okay, so getting back to this, Nam Alwar in his Tiruvai Moli 294 has said, take me for your sake. Take me for your sake. He's surrendering to the Lord. So, we could even look it up, but we won't do that right now. We can do it some other time. Okay, so with the following two sentences, he states the obstacles to the service. Okay, so the obstacles. So he's given here two quotes, one from Andal's Tirupavai 29 and one from Tiruvai Moli, Nam Alwar's 294, about how we should be thinking. So here in the last part of the Dwaya Mantra explaining the word Namaha, how we should actually think, about the service, the eternal service that we're taking to, which is moksha, which is the goal. So with the following two sentences, he states the obstacles for this service. Beauty is an obstacle. Whose beauty? The Lord's beauty. But let's talk about it. Beauty is an obstacle. So is the service mentioned before, right? His physical beauty, the Supreme Lord. Remember we said in service, what gets us to do the service, what gets us to ask, to request the service of the Supreme Lord, the eternal service to the Lord, is his form, his tirumeni, his divine form, and his ananta kalyana gunas, his unlimited divine qualities. Those things all together attract us and give us joy. And when we have that joy, then we naturally want to serve him lovingly, because the service is loving. It's loving service that we perform. So if it's not loving service, it's not proper service. The service should be loving, and the love is brought out of us by seeing the Lord and experiencing his unlimited auspicious qualities. So his physical beauty is so beguiling, it can cause one to falter. We become stunned, right? Not so much in America, but in England and in other English-speaking countries, we say if somebody is dressed very beautifully, like a woman might be dressed very beautifully, and we say she's stunning. We become stunned. When we see the Lord, when we see the Supreme Personality, it's like that. It's a stunning sight. We see it, we become stunned. We become motionless. We become unable to act. What does stunned mean? Stunned means we're unable to act for a moment. It doesn't mean permanently. Permanently, we don't go into a coma and we can't do anything. But by seeing the Lord, we become stunned by his beauty. He's so beautiful. He's so amazing that by our sight and by our glimpse of him, or by understanding just a fraction of his splendor, right? What happened in Bhagavad Gita? The Lord showed his universal form to Arjuna. Arjuna was stunned. Arjuna was even stunned after the universal form, when Lord Krishna again took a four-handed form before he became back to his two-handed form. And Arjuna said, please, show me your two-handed form again, because I am stunned. He was stunned by the majesty, the beauty and majesty of the Lord. He was totally stunned. So beauty is an obstacle sometimes, right? If Krishna hadn't withdrawn his universal form or his form with four-handed form, Arjuna would have been unable to fight. He would have been unable to do anything. He would have just been standing there transfixed. So it is when we see the Lord. So it is when we begin to understand his unlimited divine auspicious qualities. We become stunned. So beauty it's an obstacle in a sense. It's an obstacle to be stunned, right? If something's too beautiful, we can't take our eyes off it. We see something which is too beautiful. We can't take our eyes off it. If you're driving your car and you see something which stuns you, right? You're liable to have an accident because you can't concentrate anymore on what you're doing. So even a great devotee of the Lord may be stunned by the beauty of the Lord. Even though he's doing service to the Lord, he becomes stunned. He's unable to continue his service or even to start his service. So that's the point being made here. This stunning beauty of the Lord can be an obstacle. His physical beauty is so beguiling that it will cause one to falter. Therefore, it is an obstacle to service. Imagine that. Imagine that obstacle to service. You actually get to see God face to face, and you can't serve him because you're so in awe of him, of his beauty and majesty. So the service referred to by the fourth case ending, the Aya, in Narayanaya, right, is prior to the Namaha, right? So the service, the request for service comes at the beginning of service, and the service in the last part of the Dvaya mantra, Srimate Narayanaya Namaha, is indicated by the Aya on Narayanaya, which comes before the Namaha, right? And therefore the Namaha, right? The service referred to in the fourth case prior to this Namaha or Namas, like the attendance given to one's beloved, right? It is a way to gain pleasure for oneself, right? The service referred to by the Aya prior to the Namaha is a way to gain pleasure for oneself. When one starts to request service, when he sees the Supreme Lord, he becomes stunned and he enjoys that. He enjoys that. That enjoyment, that self-enjoyment stops him from, when you see something stunning, you're enjoying the sight. And your enjoyment of the sight stops you from you're enjoying the sight of the Lord. It stops you from continuing the service or starting the service, right? Therefore, even it is an obstacle to this service, whose purpose is the Lord's enjoyment. If we're so enamored of the Lord, it sounds like doesn't sound like a bad problem to me, really. It's not really a bad problem. The point is our true purpose is to serve the Lord, and it's for his enjoyment. So anything that gets in the way of his enjoyment, and even this, our enjoyment may get in, our little enjoyment, our being stunned by his beauty may get in the way of offering him service. We're too enamored by the Lord to offer him service, right? So such being the case, he reveals that the request for destruction of these obstacles must be made continually. So we have to pray to the Lord continually. Lord, you're so beautiful and you're so amazing and your majesty is just awesome, like that. Please don't let me be so attracted by your majesty and your awesomeness that I can't serve you, that I can't please you, that I'm stunned by your beauty and your majesty. Right. So that's why he's saying that prayer also should be continual, like that. Let's see what PB and Amachara says. So the thought that service is done for his pleasure should happen. So we should think like that. Nevertheless, the primary meaning of Namaha is the removal of the thought that it is done for the soul's benefit. That is the meaning of Namaha, the primary meaning of the Namaha here at the end of Dwaya Mantra, not the primary meaning of the Namaha in other places, like in the middle of Astakshara Mantra, Om Namo Narayana. Therefore, it is that prayer which should be in mind when reciting it. When we are reciting the Dwaya Mantra, we should think of the service of the Lord. We should think of requesting the service of the Lord. And with the very last word, we should be thinking, when we're chanting Dwaya Mantra, we should be thinking, oh Lord, please remove that obstacle of you being so awesome and so stunningly beautiful that I can't serve you properly. I do not want to enjoy that so much that I can't serve you. When the service is performed, the thought that it is for the benefit of both the soul and the Lord should be avoided. When the service to the Lord is performed, we should not think this is for the benefit of the Lord, but I'm also enjoying this. Because as soon as we think of my own enjoyment like that, it prevents us from fully engaging in the Lord's service for his enjoyment. There should not even be a tinge of understanding of our enjoyment. Instead, it should be performed for his pleasure alone. Right? And this he's quoting here from Tirupalai also. Unnake nam at sevon. Right? Namalwar too said, and he quotes the Tamil from Namalwar, which we just discussed. Okay, so going back to the main text. Okay, text 183. Like the prayer for service, the prayer in this world is also continual. So the prayer for service is continuous, and the service is eternal. The prayer for service is eternal, and the prayer for being free from any obstacle to service, including our own enjoyment, is eternal. Should be continual. The prayer for service stated in the fourth case ending, that is the Aya on Narayanaya, has been declared to be continual, not just occasional. Similarly, the prayer for the destruction of obstacles to service, stated in this word, Namaha, right, should be made at all times, no matter whether we are here on earth or have reached the heavenly realm, Prapya Bhumi. Prapya Bhumi is another term for Sri Vaikuntha. Bhumi means that place or that earth, Prapya, which we wish to attain. It doesn't mean Swarga, it doesn't mean heavenly planets or anything in this material world. Prapya Bhumi here, it means the heavenly realm, it means Sri Vaikuntha, Paramapadam, the supreme place. Does the obstacle of self-enjoyment arise even in the land which is free from all evil? It's a good question, right? Does that obstacle of self-enjoyment arise even in Sri Vaikuntha? To this he replies, it is not said, is it not said? Is it not said, the remedy for uprooting our enjoyment, etc. Right? This is a quote from Tiravaimoli, also by Namalwar, 934. So 934 out of the 1,000, 934. Right? So, O you who are the remedy that cuts off the thoughts of our own enjoyment of the bliss, which comes from experiencing you, the remedy which heals us so that our essential nature won't be destroyed. This, in the form of a prayer, is what the eternally freed souls, the Nitya Surikal. Nitya Surikal, remember I said Kal means plural in Tamil. So Nitya Suris means Nitya Siddhas, the eternally liberated souls who are always, have always, and will always serve the Supreme Lord in Sri Vaikuntha. Right? This is the prayer which they constantly chant. Thus, even there, the thought of one's own enjoyment can arise due to the Lord's magnificence. It's very interesting, right? So there's a question sometimes by other Vaishnavas. They say, well, how could one want to be an enjoyer when one is living in Vaikuntha, right? Because some people have some misguided idea that one wants to become an enjoyer in Vaikuntha. But how could even this thought come about? And here the Sri Vaishnavas are saying, yes, it's possible that one could think like that to become an enjoyer, but what is he enjoying? He's enjoying the service and the sight and the experience of the Lord's form, divine Tirumeni, and his Ananta Kalyana Gunas, his unlimited auspicious qualities. That is enjoyment. That is enjoyment. But that enjoyment, we pray in Vaikuntha, even here and even in Vaikuntha, we pray that we not be stopped from our service, or we not be stunned by this awesome magnificence of the Lord, and therefore it inhibits us serving him for his pleasure only. That's what we pray. For this reason, the freed souls, right? So he says, what do you say? Thus, even the thought of one's own enjoyment can arise due to the Lord's magnificence. So it is appropriate to state that this word, again, the word namaha at the end of Dwaya mantra, right? This word, that the prayer is eternal. That prayer to relieve us from those obstacles in service is eternal. For this reason, the freed souls, or the muktas, right? Nityasuris, Nityasiddhas, whatever you want to call them, the muktas. The muktas are different from the Nityasuris. Okay, so we were here in this material world and we attain liberation, we're a mukta. If you're always there in the spiritual world, right, you've always been serving the Lord, you're a Nityasuri. Okay, so for this reason, the muktas, right, the ones who have attained liberation, right, are described as those who say namas indeed. And this is also a quote. This is a quote from Mahabharata. Mahabharata 12, 232, excuse me, 12, 323, 36. 12, 323, 36. And I think we quoted this before, just recently. We've also quoted the same verse in Mahabharata, which we should probably look up. It's a very good verse. And so what he's saying is that the freed souls, those souls that are in Vaikuntha, they are described as those who say namaha. Those who say namaha, right? But what is the meaning of their namaha in Vaikuntha? So you're chanting a mantra here, you're chanting mantras here with namaha in them, right? Especially Dwaya mantra with namaha at the end, right? But when you get to Vaikuntha, are you going to be chanting, yes, namaha. You're going to be chanting, praying namaha, right? But that namaha, what does that mean in Vaikuntha? Because you're free of ego there. You're freed of ego. You're freed of I-ness and minus. You're free of ahankara and mamakara in Vaikuntha, right? So there's no purpose to saying namaha or namaste, right? We say namaste, right? Not for you to me, not for me to you, right? It means honor to you, not to me. Namaste, that's what it means, right? Namahaste, namaste, or namaskaram, right? The sign of namaha. I honor you, not me. You, not me, right? Namaskara, namaste or namaskara. That's what it means. Okay, so namaha, we say namaha in this material world, right? But when we get to Vaikuntha, there's no need to say namaha anymore, right? Because we don't have any ahankar, we don't have any mamakar, we don't have any false ego, we don't have any possessiveness of things, right? We understand our situation perfectly. We have full knowledge, right? We're in liberation. We're there in Vaikuntha. So why would we say Namaha? Why would we say Namaste to God? Why would we say Namaskaram to God? We wouldn't, except we do, because there is this still possibility that we will think that we're enjoying the service, and this will hinder us because we are stunned by the beauty and the majesty and the greatness of God, right? And therefore it inhibits us serving him for his pleasure alone. And therefore, in the Mahabharata, which is also an Itihasa, which is considered a very high Shastra next to the Vedas, that quotation is given, that pramana is given there, that even in Vaikuntha they say Namaha, even in Vaikuntha they say Namaste, Namaskar. But what is the meaning of it? It's the same meaning that comes here at the end of Dvaya Mantra. We are praying to the Lord to not inhibit our service to him and him alone, even by us being stunned by his beauty. So that's in summary. Okay, so let's summarize here, right? Summary. In summary, the following have been explained. Number one, the goddess's meditation, her eternal union with the Lord. This is where we're going over the whole Dvaya Mantra here, right? Her eternal union with the Lord, right? His qualities of affection, etc., which arise from this meditation. His divine auspicious form, Divya Mangala Vigraha, right? Tirumani, his Divya Mangala Vigraha, right? Divine auspicious form, right? Which displays those qualities. That the property of being an upaya or being a means belongs to the one, is endowed with these qualities and with this divine form, right? Then the acceptance of that upaya, the acceptance of the means, right? Of him as the means, right? The recipient of the service, that is the Sheshi, the master, Sheshitva, right? Which is the aim of the upaya or the means, is the couple, the Lord and Lakshmi, right? That was also explained in the Dvaya Mantra, right? Right, in the first part, right? And in the second part, right? So, 8, that the entity qualified by these attributes is the Sheshi of all, which we've discussed, right? That he is the master of all, right? That service is to be given to him and the destruction of the obstacles of that service, right? What's the obstacles to the service? The obstacles, we just discussed that part. The Namaha is that last word describes the destruction of the obstacle of service. Let's see what P.B. Anangacharya says to finish off this Prakaranam. Okay, so once again, being engrossed in his divine beauty is an obstacle to the service. The service without the prayer of Namaha is inferior. So since the service in Vaikuntha is not inferior, it's perfect, it has to include the word Namaha. So Namaha is also used in Vaikuntha. So here in this material world, we say Namaste, Namaskar, we say Namaha, right? There's a meaning to the word Namaha. And we saw the meaning of the word Namaha in the Tira Mantra in between Om and Narayanaya, right? Namo. We saw the word Namo, we knew what it is. And similarly here, in the end of the Dvaya Mantra, Namaha comes again, but it has a slightly different meaning here. The meaning here, the emphasis here is on destroying the obstacles to service. Next class on Artha Panchakam, we're going to be talking about obstacles, the 5 obstacles. This is also going to come up. The obstacles to service. The obstacles to service here in this material world, the obstacles to service there in Sri Vaikuntha. So in order to avoid the obstacles here in this world, right, we always chant the Dvaya Mantra. That's why Ramanuja said always chant the Dvaya Mantra. And, right, chant Sharanagati Gaja, which is an expansion of the Dvaya Mantra, which we explained, right? The end here. There are also other obstacles to the service. His divine beauty is so great that it can carry away the soul's thought and become an obstacle. His thought just is immersed in the thought of the Lord, just like Arjuna when he saw the universal form, or he saw the 4-handed form of Krishna. There are so many examples in the scriptures where the Lord came face to face with his devotees. People were just stunned. They couldn't do anything. They know that they have to serve him, but they can't do anything because they're speechless and they're unable to move. They're stunned. The service that was spoken of in the fourth case, the ayah, before the term namaha, which is Srimate Narayanaya Namaha, right? So it comes before namaha, could be like the service between the husband and wife where there is pleasure for both, right? So before we get to namaha in the Dvaya mantra, we see Srimati Narayanaya, Srimati Narayanaya. So we can understand this is service. We're doing service to the Lord. We serve the Lord. We enjoy doing service to the Lord. He enjoys our service. It's a mutual beneficial relationship here, like that. But once we get to namaha, we realize the meaning of namaha means that we shouldn't enjoy it. Because our enjoyment, not that we can't help ourselves. We're going to enjoy it. We're enjoying the service of the Lord here in the world and there in Vaikuntha. It's enjoyable for the souls, no doubt. But the thought should be, we should focus our thought on serving the Lord despite the fact that we enjoy his service. We should always think, we should not let that enjoyment of his service come as an obstacle to doing his service. So therefore, even his divine beauty is an obstacle to the Chaitanya, to the living being, to the soul, whose goal is performing the true service, which is meant only for his pleasure alone. So the next sutra, 185 there, 186 here, right? Just as the prayer for service in the fourth case, the ayah, right, on Narayanaya, is made eternally, so too the prayer namaha, the namaha is also eternal, to remove the obstacles while performing service in both worlds, in this world and in that world, right? In Vaikuntha also. This prayer for the removal of obstacles in doing the service will happen without a break, right? Why is that? The prayer for service, which is done through the fourth case ending, the ayah on Narayanaya, is not made just one time. It is made all the time. It is eternal. That was also explained, that ayah means we're praying constantly for service. Servants got to serve. Eternal servants got to serve eternally. Therefore, eternal servants got to pray constantly, eternally for service. Right? The servant is eternal. The servant wants to serve. Therefore, the servant has to pray for service. The servant has to pray eternally because the servant's eternal. The service is eternal and the servant's eternal, and therefore the prayer has to be eternal. Has to be eternal. So this prayer, Narayanaya, unto the Lord, that is eternal. So therefore, if the service is eternal, if the prayer for service is eternal, right? Therefore, the obstacles will also be eternal, will always be there, because the service is eternal and the Lord is always, he's got always this divine Divya Mangala Vigraha to remain in divine holy form, and he's always got auspicious unlimited qualities, and therefore we are always bound to be enjoying those things, and that enjoyment may be an obstacle to our service. So we also have to pray not only for the service, but we have to pray for the removal of any obstacle to the service, even our own enjoyment. We always have to do that. That prayer also has to be eternal. So we're eternal, the Lord's eternal, his service by us to him is eternal. Our prayer to him to start the service, to serve him is eternal. Our prayer to remove the obstacles to his service also has to be eternal. All of these things are eternal. And that is what is explained. That specifically, Namaha at the end of Dvaya Mantra has got that specific meaning for our prayer to remove the obstacles to serve him alone. Him and him alone. Okay, so I think with that, we have some more here. This prayer for removing the obstacles in performance of the service is also seen in the Alwaz pasarams, in the Alwaz verses right, which were written as talk of the Nityasuris. So Nam Alwar has described the Nityasuris, has described what happens in Sri Vaikuntha, has described the eternal service of the Lord in the following ways. So, and we heard those already, but let's hear them again. Can self-satisfaction, which is the obstacle to the service, happen even in his abode? That's a question. How could that happen? How could one become self-satisfied up there and be not immediately serving the Lord? that this could happen is seen in Nam Alwar's Pasaram, and he gives the Tamil. Alwar states that the Nityasuris say, and he gives the Tamil, right? That is, they're saying that he is the medicine. The Lord is the medicine that removes the self-gratification that comes to them upon doing service and experiencing him and protecting their true protects their true nature, right? The Lord protects what's our true nature? Our true nature is to be his eternal servant, is our purpose is for him only, for his pleasure only, not for our pleasure at all, right? That's our true nature. So therefore, we pray to him constantly to remove those obstacles. And guess what? He protects us from that. He protects us from that obstacle. He protects us because he wants to protect our pristine true nature in Vaikuntha. He wants to protect us here too, but sometimes we don't allow him. When we surrender to him, he will protect us. He will protect our true nature. But in Vaikuntha, he certainly is protecting us at every step in our service. He's helping us to serve him correctly, right? Thus, it is shown that there is a reason for the recitation of Namaha at the end of the mantra, even in his abode, even in Sri Vaikuntha, even in Paramapada, even in the supreme place, even once we've made it to the eternal service of the Lord, there is still a reason for this Namaha. There's still a reason for this understanding. And that is to help us to pray to get rid of the obstacles to service, which he will also get rid of. He will also help us with. So now we come to Charma Sloka Prakaranam introduction. So I'm going to stop the share here. Right. So that is the end of the Dwaya Prakaranam. So we at the end of the main text there, we went through a list. We could just have a look at it again, maybe, and we could have a look at the summary form. So in summary, Dwaya mantra in summary talks about the goddess's mediation. The goddess's mediation. The goddess mediates, right? So we're talking about the first part of the Dwaya mantra has to do with the means, the upaya. The Lord is the means, right? So the goddess's mediation is important and is always 100% successful. 2, her eternal union with the Lord. Sriman Narayana Charano, right? She is always with the Lord. His qualities of affection, which arise from this mediation, right? He is an affectionate person, but when she invokes his affection, then his affection to us will be for sure. It will be 100%. His divine auspicious form, his Divya Mangala Vigraha, which displays those qualities. That the property of being the upaya, right? The quality of him being the means belongs to the one who is endowed with those qualities of divine form, right? Then the acceptance of the upaya, the acceptance of the Lord as the means, right? Then that the recipient of the service, which is the aim of the upaya, is the couple. We serve both the Supreme Lord and the Goddess, and we serve all living beings. We serve all the Alwars and the Acharyas and everybody like that, but specifically the divine couple. That the entity qualified by these attributes is the Sheshi. The Lord is the master of all. The service is given to him, and the destruction to the obstacles of service given by that last word, Namaha, in the Dwaya mantra. So here we finish the Dwaya Prakaranam. And so now we've understood the complete and full, deep meanings of the word of the Dwaya mantra.